Monster Synthesis Master. Chapter 381 Your golden finger has been updated. Link and the two mech warriors beside him were all attracted by the bouncing yellow metal on the ground. When the golden metal stopped jumping and lay quietly on the ground, the three of them could finally see the full appearance of the item. It was a golden bracelet. The bracelet was made of gold, and the ring part of the bracelet was shaped like a worm of death. Its body was similar to a worm, and its head organs were blurry. Its mouth had ring-like sharp teeth. At the end of the death beetle, there was a lifelike sacred beetle. This golden bracelet was exactly the same as the one Link had used to activate the bug tribe's nest gold finger. Giggle. Link's heart was in his throat, and his eyes burned with passion. As expected, this golden bangle was also related to the bug tribe's hive. As long as he could get the bangle, he could increase the synthesis formula of his gold finger and the progress of the S-rank mission heart of the bug horde. The small necklace he found in Platinum Hotel's collection room last time had increased his progress by a few points. This complete golden bangle would definitely add more points. Link looked up at the two robot warriors. Their eyes met, and their eyes shone with greed. Whoever sees it gets a share. The two robot warriors immediately stretched out their hands to snatch it. Gold was a rare resource on every planet, and it was even more so in the city of Mech. After all, they were all mechanics. Gold was extremely ductile, very resistant to corrosion, and had a high conductivity. It was also a reflective object of electromagnetic radiation and was often used as a key material in the construction of advanced machinery. Adding some gold to their mechanical equipment and mechas could also improve their effects by a lot. However, they were no match for Link's speed. They only felt a gust of wind and a figure flashed past. An exquisite golden bracelet appeared in Link's hand. At the same time, Link received a system notification. Bug Tribe Hive Fragment detected. Proceed with fusion? Yes/no. Link chose to fuse them without hesitation. You're not being kind, are you? The three of us discovered this together, so anyone who sees it will have a share. What's the meaning of you taking it all away? Just now, when he was helping, he called him brother affectionately, but now that the loot was not evenly divided, he immediately changed his face. Link glanced at the door of the processing room. The footsteps were getting closer and closer. Do you want this thing to be discovered and be taken away by the captain alone, or do you want the three of us to split it equally on the spot? Isn't that nonsense? If the captain finds out, what's the point of us? The robot warrior said in a low voice. As soon as he finished speaking, the mechanical warrior carrying the coffin entered the processing room again. Link quickly hid the golden bangle behind his exoskeleton armor. The other two quickly lowered their heads and started working too. However, they couldn't help but glance in Link's direction, afraid that Link would take all the gold. The integration of the bug tribe's hive fragments is complete. Please check the specific effects yourself. The system was also quite cold. It didn't explain anything at all and let Link check everything on his own. What surprised Link was that a mission completion notification popped up at the same time. Current progress of S-level mission Heart of the Swarm has reached 10%. The reward for the first stage has been activated. Mission reward 1000000, experience points 50, potential points unlocked. Talent Swarm Commander. The second phase of the S-rank mission Heart of the Swarm has begun. Just a fragment of the Zerg's nest had increased Link's mission progress by 5%, and he had received the reward for the first phase of the mission. Link still had 2.55 million experience points in his experience pool. He had invited 6 Inhumans for the mission in the city and gave each of them 50,000 experience points. He had lost 300,000 experience points in total, leaving him with 2.25 million experience points. Originally, he had planned to do some missions to increase his experience pool and help the players in the desert in the future. He did not expect to suddenly complete the first stage of the S-rank mission Heart of the Swarm and receive 100,000 experience points. This saved Link a lot of trouble. With the value of 50 potential points, this novel was already close to 1.1 million words, so the author didn't need to go into more details, right? The last one was the Talent Swarm Commander. Talent was the most difficult thing to improve in the attribute panel. In version 1.0 Saint's Descent, the number of NPCs with talent on the 3 novice planets was less than 10. Talents were also known as main character template by players. NPCs with talents played a pivotal role in the progress of the story of the entire game. And now, the Swarm Commander filled the gap in Link's talent bar. Link impatiently checked the talent's description. Bug Tribe Commander. When controlling Bug Tribe creatures to fight, you can use the will of the Bug Tribe to give orders. 1 energy attribute point is equivalent to 100 meters of control distance, and it increases the combat power of the Bug Tribe creatures you control by 10%. After reading the talent's introduction, Link was dazed for a moment. Arachnid life forms. Life forms that were synthesized from arachnid hives were all classified as arachnids. He could use the will of the swarm to give orders to all living creatures, and the range of command was determined by the energy attribute. Link now had 145 points of energy, which meant that he could control all pets within a 14500 meter radius. 14.5 kilometers. If the distance was doubled, Link could even control Windhowl's pets from the city. Moreover, this kind of control prevented him from having a language barrier with his pet. In the past, when he was doing dual operations, he had to bring along the fat translator, the macaw, to arrange things for his pets. Now that he had the Bug Commander talent, he could use the Bug Tribe's will to control his pets remotely and did not have to rush around to send mission requirements. Finally, it could increase the combat power of all Zerg creatures by 10%. This talent. Awesome! Now that they've left, hurry up and hand over the golden bangle. The 2 robot warriors suddenly berated in a low voice, interrupting Link's thoughts. Link furrowed his brows, already showing some displeasure. He took out the cracked golden bangle from the back of the exoskeleton armor and broke it into 3 pieces. Since we're splitting it equally, we'll each take a piece. You guys choose first. The 2 robot warriors quickly took away the 2 larger pieces and hid them in their mechanical equipment, leaving Link with the smaller piece. Link laughed coldly to himself. If they weren't greedy, the gold would be their reward. However, since the 2 of them had a death wish, they could not blame Link for treating them like lab rats. Link glanced at the heart of the swarm mission. It was now in the 2nd phase, and the progress and rewards had changed. Establishing mission hint: before the Zerg Queen is sealed, spread the Zerg's divine weapon, the Hive, to all parts of the universe. Only by finding all the fragments of the divine artifact could the Empress come again. Every time you find a fragment of a divine artifact, your ability will also improve accordingly. Current progress, 10%. 20% stage reward, 1000000, experience points 50, potential points unlocking specialty insect group affinity, 30% of the stage reward will be unlocked upon completion. Mission completion reward, unlock the Cosmic Disaster version and receive the title of Zerg Emperor. The 20% stage reward still had no change in experience and potential points. The only change was that it changed from talent to specialty. Link had thought that it would be difficult to complete the mission. However, he had come up with a bold idea after finding gold items related to the Zerg's nest in the ruins and the pyramid. Perhaps the desert civilization of the old era was inextricably linked to the space Zerg. If he could annex the machinery faith and the wasteland gang and sweep through the desert, he would be able to organize manpower and resources to excavate the old ruins. Perhaps he would be able to find more fragments of the hive and improve his progress. Alright, all the coffins have been moved in. Now, let's hurry up and disinfect and remove the coffins. If we don't complete the task later, the captain is going to give us a beating again. The robot warriors all complained. If it was an ordinary corpse, 10 minutes of disinfection and stripping would be enough. However, this time, All the mummies that were transported here were from the desert ruins. Many of them were tied with cloth strips, which had long been connected to their skin after hundreds of years of dry weathering. It was difficult to disinfect or peel them off. Link glanced at the time on the exoskeleton armor. There were only 5 minutes left before Dave's agreed time. The surrounding robot warriors were full of complaints. Link suddenly had an idea. Well, Yingluo, if you're in a hurry, you can go ahead with your work. I'm free today, so I can stay behind and slowly deal with these corpses. Link's words were like a bonfire on a cold snow mountain, a lighthouse on a stormy sea, or a cool breeze in the forest in spring. It was so refreshing, and they could hear the most wonderful sound in their most helpless moments. Really? You're really willing to help us complete the mission? Link's expression was solemn. He puffed out his chest and raised his head. I didn't take on this mission for you. It's for the development of the holy city. I'm a pioneer. The robot warriors were shocked by Link's impassioned oath and immediately felt ashamed. Just as the mech warriors were packing up and preparing to leave, 2 voices rang out from the crowd. You guys go first, we'll stay behind to help out a little. We'll go out when it's time to gather. The other robot warriors were not suspicious. It was fine as long as they were not doing dirty and tiring work. After everyone left, the 2 robot warriors who had divided the gold earlier revealed a smile that said, I understand everything. You took all the work on your own because you want to take the gold out of these mummies and keep it for yourself, right? Link was taken aback. His eyes flickered, but he couldn't help but sigh under the pressure of their gazes. Since you've already seen through it, we can only split the swan and I equally. The 3 of them began to untie the bandages on the mummy. After some effort, all kinds of cloth were scattered on the floor of the room, and all the mummies were exposed to the air, but they still could not find anything. The 2 robot warriors unwillingly scanned the mummy's body again, and finally, they sighed. It's almost time, I'll leave the rest of the work to you. Since there was no gold or treasure, the 2 of them were too lazy to clean up the rotten bodies. They found an excuse and left. After everyone had left, Link glanced at the time. There was only 1 minute left until the scheduled time. Link immediately walked out of the room and returned to Helen's nutrition chamber. Only then did Link have the time to check the updated content of his gold finger. Opening the system interface, Link discovered that behind the attributes, missions, synthesis, and pets sections, there was a new menu: bond. Fetters. This menu was a little inexplicable and abrupt. He couldn't understand what the name had to do with the Zergs. Link entered the connections menu and a system notification popped up. There were about 500 words in the description. After reading it, Link used his good literary skills to analyze the content and finally extracted the following 3 points. Simply put, the effect of comradeship was that it could be used to comradate 2 or more pets. The comradeship effect formed between different pets was different, but it was generally to enhance their joint action strength. Of course, comradeship was not a match. Forming a comradeship required the support of materials. Materials of the same quality as the pet were needed to successfully form a comradeship. For example, Lin K's Silver Army Ant and Silver Formation Wall Ant were both blue-grade pets. If he wanted to form a bond with them, he would need 2 sets of blue-grade materials. Another example was the white-grade Spy Mouse and the blue-grade Treasure Hunting Mouse. If he wanted to form a bond, he would need 1 white and 1 blue material each. The effect of comradeship was based on the characteristics or tacit understanding between the 2 creatures, and it also depended on the compatibility rate, just like synthesis. Interesting. Synthesis is based on the compatibility between the creature and the material, while this bond is based on the compatibility between the creatures. If there is a chemical reaction between the 2 organisms, it will definitely produce a good comradeship effect. Just as Lin K was thinking about what kind of comradeship combinations he could find among his current pets, he suddenly heard a sound of pressure being released from the nutrition chamber. After a long period of stress relief, Helen's nutrition chamber slowly opened. Helen, who was soaked in the nutrient solution, suddenly felt suffocated. She spat out a lot of bubbles and got up. Whoosh! The nutrient solution splattered everywhere. If not for Link's quick reaction, he would have been covered in it by now. Helen's orange hair was wet, like a rag that had been soaked in water all year round, twisted into a ball. The viscous nutrient solution was also dripping from her face. She stared at Link, her eyes filled with shock. You are Link?" Helen asked uncertainly, her body visibly trembling. Although her grandfather had told her that someone called Link would come to her rescue, the mechanical warrior in front of her wearing an exoskeleton armor made Helen react in an extreme way. "We'll leave as soon as we meet up with Dave," said Link, nodding. Hearing Link's answer and confirming her identity, Helen let out a breath of relief. Her trembling muscles gradually relaxed, and she covered her face with her hands. After a while, Dave ran up the stairs in his scavenger mech. The moment he saw Helen, he was stunned. In the next second, tears streamed down her face. P.S. After the summary was posted on October 31st, everyone enthusiastically voted for the monthly votes. In the last stage, there was an additional 100 monthly votes, so there was another chapter, so there were a total of 53 chapters added in November. Chapter 382 A Sudden Change. Helen and Dave looked at each other and were both stunned. In Dave's impression, Helen was still the child who followed behind him, babbling and asking for a hug. However, he had overlooked the fact that Helen had grown from a child to a beautiful young girl in 10 years. Through the transparent vision cabin of the scavenger mech, Helen saw her grandfather, whose hair was white and one of his eyes was even equipped with a mechanical telescope. Link, who was stuck in the middle, looked at the two people who were crying and couldn't help but say, "Although I sympathize with the two of you, I still have to say that this place is very dangerous. A team of robot warriors came here just now, and we might be discovered at any time." Dave, who was in the mech, quickly wiped his tears and said, "Helen, we'll definitely be discovered if we bring you out like this. We'll have to trouble you to continue hiding in the nourishment chamber. We'll lie and say that we'll send you to the experimental area for maintenance. I've waited for 10 years. Helen nodded with certainty. "I can wait for now." Helen lay back down in the nutrition chamber, and Dave closed the door himself. The nutrient solution began to boil and fill with oxygen, quickly reaching a level suitable for human lungs to breathe. Link helped Dave place the nutrition chamber on the back of the scavenger mech. The oxygen and power supply were all connected to the nutrition chamber. Immediately after, Dave pressed the start button, and a few folded steel plates rose from the back of the scavenger mech, covering the nutrition cabin and protecting it tightly. "Your mecha is too perfect," Link couldn't help but exclaim. "You even thought of this?" Dave looked at the tightly sealed and completely protected nutrition chamber on the holographic screen, and his hanging heart finally settled down. "For the past 10 years, I've been asking myself every day what I should do to get Helen back if I have the chance to sneak into the city." He would run simulations every day and then find his own flaws. It's been 10 years, and both the mecha and the plan have matured. Dave looked up at Link. "But what we're going to do next is no longer in my plan. It's all up to you, President Lin. Don't worry. With me here, I'll definitely help you to return to Shandu successfully." Link's lips curled into a confident smile. In Lin Ji's previous life, Dave had successfully infiltrated the city just before the players attacked it. As he had said, his plan was perfect and flawless. However, when they fled from the city, the Freedom Federation's front line began to push forward. The city's steel torrent was dispatched. Dave happened to be caught between the two armies. In the end, in order to protect his granddaughter, he was shot by a stray bullet and died. The grandfather and grandson had not seen each other for 10 years, but they had been separated forever after meeting for less than a day. Since then, Helen had an extreme hatred for machinery. In order to completely get rid of the machinery faith, she actively devoted herself to machinery research and looked for the weakness of the machinery faith. She used machines to fight against machines and obtained the title of Mother Goddess of Machinery as a mortal. Link was very familiar with this part of the plot. After all, he had experienced it himself. It was also the only B-rank mission he had received on Wasteland. Link and Dave went downstairs and left the energy center. The two of them let out a breath of relief at the same time. Dave's mission was completed. As long as everything went well on John's side, the operation would be a success. However, they had only taken a few steps when the treasure-hunting mouse in Link's pocket squeaked in warning. Soon, Link saw a group of robot warriors walking over. Behind them were rows of huge, transparent glass containers filled with a grayish-green solution. Link could vaguely see the shadows of humans in these containers. "What do we do?" Dave's voice trembled a little, afraid that these robot warriors would see through his plan. Link examined it and said in a low voice, "Don't show your fear, follow me." The two sides were on the same road, and they saw each other hundreds of meters apart. They sized each other up. When they were 50 feet apart, Link spoke first, "Brothers, did you come from the experimental area?" The other party bared his teeth and pointed at the rows of large jars behind him. "Send some new batteries over. By the way, why are there only 2 of you?" Link's features scrunched up and he waved his hand. "Hey, don't mention it. I was down there picking out the zealots for the ascension ritual. After I finished and just returned, I was immediately called up to help deal with the newly transported mummies. The transportation team left because of an urgent matter. This zealot and I who successfully ascended have just finished the post-completion work." The robot warrior looked at Dave, who was in the scavenger mech at the side. After sizing him up for a while, his facial expression suddenly changed to one of shock. "This green energy Kazaya. That's right, this person had a pioneer resonance during his ascension." The mech warrior in charge of Rhyme looked at the dark green energy ball on the back of the scavenger mech, and the envy in his eyes was almost overflowing. To be able to gain the resonance of a pioneer, he would at least be an apostle in the future and would be able to come into contact with more truths than mechanical warriors like them. "If there's nothing else, we'll take our leave. I still have to bring this newcomer to report." The other party also nodded, and the last bit of doubt disappeared. A mech warrior with the potential to become an apostle was not someone they could offend. As they passed each other, Link glanced at the glass jars and confirmed that they were indeed filled with people. At that moment, Link froze. He saw a familiar face in the grayish-green jar. Was she captured? Link's mind was filled with thoughts. The person in the gray-green jar was none other than the #1 singer on Wasteland Planet, Ally. If there was a real superstar on Wasteland Planet, it wasn't the leaders of the 3 cities of the Freedom Federation, the leaders of the major forces, or the killer god John. There was only one real superstar on Wasteland Planet, Wasteland singer Arya. Ally's voice was like the sound of nature, but it was also like a demonic sound. Anyone who heard it would fall into the illusion created by the song. There was a saying among the players in his previous life. If you had 50,000 Wasteland coins, would you choose to buy a piece of good equipment or a ticket to the last row of the Wasteland Singer concert? At that time, 98% of the people had voted for the latter. Ally's profession was a soul singer, a special profession after the class change of the Enigma singer. Of course, everyone flocked to Ally's concert. On one hand, it was indeed nice to listen to. On the other hand, after listening to it, players would randomly receive various powerful buffs that lasted for a week. The buffs would not disappear even after death. The effects of the buffs were much more powerful than a piece of equipment. It could be called a kind buff machine. Before clearing an instance dungeon or an important plot, many players would choose to listen to Ally's tour in the Wasteland to give themselves a strong status and temporarily increase their strength. However, because Ally only had one concert at each location, there would often be a large number of players and NPCs chasing after the concert of the Wasteland Singer, which was a wonder of the Wasteland planet. Link clearly remembered that a few months ago, the Shitub papers had published an article about the Wasteland Singer, Arya, starting a new tour. Shitub Station was one of them. But now, the concert was over, and they saw another UFO who looked exactly like her in the floating mech city. The two of them were far away from the energy center and could not help but speed up. Dave saw that Link's expression had been serious since just now and seemed to understand something after some thought. "President Lin, did you see someone familiar in those glass jars?" Link came back to his senses and explained, "Maybe I'm mistaken. They just look similar." "Alright, let's not talk about this anymore. We're almost at the laboratory. There are many members of the machinery faith here, so we have to be careful with our words and actions." Dave nodded with certainty. It was not easy to save Helen, and this time he would not allow any accidents to happen. After entering the experimental area, the number of machinery faith members increased visibly, and it was much more lively than the cold and quiet energy area. However, this excitement came with risks. Because Dave's green energy ball was too eye-catching, the mechanical warriors who passed by the two of them all turned their heads to look at it, their eyes full of envy. Some of the mechanical apostles with higher ranks also showed a rare sense of agreement on their cold faces after seeing Dave. Link's expression relaxed. And no matter how big Dave's heart was, being stared at by so many people, he was still nervous and sweating. The two's different expressions also reflected their respective identities. One was an experienced mechanical warrior who had gone down to select ascendants, while the other was a young and inexperienced zealot who had just ascended. Link sent John a message on the way. "Is the progress going well on your side?" A moment later, John replied with a message. 6 Inhumans have been sent away. You'll know the rest when you come. Coordinates." John didn't say much in the message. He knew that Link's message meant that Dave's problem had been solved. Link furrowed his brows. He didn't expect the players to be sent away. Also, John's ambiguous reply meant that he had encountered something difficult that he couldn't do anything about. If it was just a single robot warrior, Link had no doubt that John could kill them all. However, since it left John speechless, it was obvious that something that wasn't fatal and wasn't exposed but difficult to deal with had happened. Following the coordinates John had sent him, Link found one of the laboratories in the research area. The architectural style of the experimental area was different from that of the energy area. The architectural style here really highlighted a kind of mechanical thinking. The huge laboratory had distinct edges and corners. The exterior was covered with dust-free solar panels, which reflected the light of other catalytic towers, roads, and neon lights in the night. It was gorgeous. However, in Link's eyes, the huge laboratory was like an eerie coffin. The two of them stood at the door of the laboratory. Dave let out a breath and said, "You can go back to Yingluo after you're done here." But before he could finish, Link stopped him. "Good fellow. The matter wasn't settled yet, and he had already raised a flag." When Link heard the first half of the sentence, he felt that something was wrong. Fortunately, he had reacted quickly and stopped Dave. Otherwise, Dave would have finished the whole sentence and it would have been difficult to go back today. Link and Dave were scanned by the robot at the door and successfully entered the laboratory. The inside of the laboratory was just as Link had expected. It was dark and eerie. The laboratory building was more than 10 stories high. The hall was dark, and the four corners of the building were shimmering with a red light. This place was not like an energy area. The laboratory was related to the future development of the machinery city. Other than the machinery giant where Professor Zhao was from, this place was the most important. There were cameras everywhere, and there was no place to hide. Link knew that with the machinery faith's abilities, these cameras would not have any blind spots. Thus, every move would be monitored from now on. He had to be extremely careful, be it his actions or words. Walking through the hall, there were only dim lights in the corridor, and everything else was swallowed by darkness. In the huge laboratory, other than Link and Dave's footsteps, there was no other sound. Occasionally, one or two robots would pass by like silent ghosts. Dave's nerves were extremely tense. "Don't be nervous. You're someone who has achieved the resonance of a pioneer. No one here would dare to hurt you." Link tried to calm Dave down. Dave nodded, understanding what Link was trying to say. The two of them stood in front of the elevator and pressed the button. The elevator started to come down from the 17th floor. While waiting for the elevator, Link used his talent Bug Commander. The next second, the locations of all pets within 14.5 kilometers appeared in his mind. Link first controlled the Tentacles Dragon and had it follow the trajectory of the mech city in the Garnia Grand Canal. Then, he focused all his attention on the pets in the city. In his mind, Link could clearly see the positions of all his pets. The self-destructing rats were still curled up at the base of the mech. Link immediately gave the order for them to be evenly distributed among the 4 major areas of the city. Next, he mobilized all the spy mice to rush to the building where the experimental area was located and get ready to steal the information. The last was the Silver Army Ant. It had already followed Link into the laboratory building and was waiting with the 5 mice on the basement level, waiting for Link's orders. Link exited his commander's state from the mind. The elevator reached the first floor and the door opened. John's laboratory was on the 13th floor, and it was called the Immortality Laboratory. It was used to carry out various research in the Eternal Life Plan. In a moment, the elevator reached the 13th floor. The two of them had just stepped out of the elevator when they stopped in their tracks. The lights along the corridor were a strange, dark red. On both sides of the corridor were black mirror-like glass. Link and Dave saw themselves in the mirror, very clearly. Link patted his pocket, signaling the treasure-hunting mouse to start searching for John's room. Xiao Bao timidly popped his head out of Link's pocket. The next second, he covered his eyes with his 2 little paws. He was also frightened by the strange atmosphere in the building. Its meaty nose trembled as it analyzed the smell in the air, trying its best to analyze the familiar scent of John. Squeak, squeak. Link could feel where Xiao Bao was pointing and walked over with Dave. The entire 13th floor was like a huge maze. After many turns, Link stopped in front of a door. Squeak. Link knew that this was the place. Hula! Link pushed the door open, and John appeared in front of him. Beside him was a brainless researcher who laughed in a creepy way. Interesting, interesting. I've never seen a memory extraction and output from a vegetable before. This can be one of the new research topics in the project Eternal Life. Chapter 383 The Talent of the Number 1 Assassin. The sound of the door opening interrupted the mad scientist's speech. The scientist's body had been completely replaced by a machine, and only his brain was immersed in a light green solution. Through the transparent glass, one could see that his brain was contracting and trembling rapidly under extreme excitement. Occasionally, bubbles would float up from the solution. The brain was surrounded by all kinds of tubes and circuits. At first glance, it looked like a root that grew from the brain. Brain in a jar. In the system of the machinery faith, one's status was determined by how many parts of the body could be replaced with machinery. The higher the degree of mechanical body, the higher the status. Zealots used machinery, mechanical warriors were proficient in machinery, and mechanical apostles represented the peak of external machinery theory. Above that was the core theory of the machinery faith, which was also the reason why eternal mechanical life attracted so many zealots. At this level, the theoretical research was extremely rich, and there were more and more mechanized parts. By using their own machines, they could experience more profound machinery theories. The lethality of the machines created could be described as being reborn. They were completely different from the previous members of the machinery faith. If one were to say that when one reached the peak of external machinery theory, what was created was still a machine, but it was a human controlling the machine. Then, after being reborn, the machine would become the body itself, the expansion and continuation of the will. Other than the fact that his brain and body had been completely mechanized, this scientist was one of the top scientists in the machinery faith's strict hierarchy, other than their leader, Dr. Zhao. These people had extremely high status and authority in the machinery city, and they were also explorers on the path of eternal machinery. Other than that, they were also the elders of the Steel Council. The Iron Council was led by the leader of the machinery faith, Professor Zhao. He gathered the best scientists in the city, and all major events in the city had to be discussed and voted in the Iron Council before they were passed. Link used his detector on the mad scientist and confirmed his guess. Name? Race, cyborg. Level 40+, elite. Class, mechanic, unknown. HP, 6200/6200. Evaluation, only one step away from becoming an intelligent machine. After reading the information, Link was even more certain of his guess. This mad scientist was one of the elders of the Iron Council. The scientist's facial features were completely mechanical, and no change in emotion could be seen on his face. His mechanical eyes were fixed on Link. When its eyes swept over Dave's scavenger mech, its mechanical eyes focused and carefully sized up Dave's mech. Immediately after, Dave found that a program had suddenly appeared on his holographic panel. The dense program code flooded the screen, and a moment later, the window closed automatically. Among the zealots who ascend, not even 1 in 100 can build a complete mech. Your mech program is quite rigorous. It's rare even among the pioneers of resonance. Not bad. If you focus your energy on researching high-efficiency energy sources and engine conversion rates, it can make your mech's abilities go up another level. By the way, do you have a name for this mecha? Dave swallowed his saliva and said a little nervously, Scavenger Mecha. Scavenger Mecha. The mad scientist mumbled to himself, good name. Looking at the materials of your mecha, they're all pieced together from different places, and the welding technique is flawless. You should have gone through countless drafts before you started. Dave trembled all over and was dumbfounded. The mad scientist in front of him was like a god. Standing in the distance, he could directly invade his mech and obtain the highest authority to check the underlying code without going through any interface or signal request. Fortunately, Dave didn't add any sensitive content in the code. Otherwise, all of them would have been exposed with just one glance from this big boss. Dave's reaction was getting a little out of hand. Link quickly stepped forward to ease the tension. This group of people was selected by me to ascend today. This guy brought a vegetable with him, so I asked him to come to the laboratory to see if there was a way to wake him up successfully. Then, I was just about to report to Yingluo. I was called to help out at the energy center. The mad scientist replied. Link was taken aback, but he quickly nodded. Facing an enemy who could read mechanical information at any time, Link felt as if he had been seen through. He shuddered. Since you're here, then stay and witness the first case of recovery of consciousness on Wasteland. It converts a person's memory into data, empties the brain, redivides the brain's storage, and finally, injects the memory into the brain. Successfully awakens. The mad scientist returned to the main topic and walked to the experiment cabin excitedly. He looked at the woman who was extracting her memories and subconsciously laughed. If it's successful, it will be a pioneer in brain injury recovery technology. In the future, the casualty rate of the machinery faith will be greatly reduced. The mechanical fingers of the Iron Council elder moved back and forth like a snake, waiting for the data to be uploaded. Link and John exchanged a look and waited quietly for the data to be uploaded. Masha was placed in the heater of the experiment table. There were more than a dozen data cables connected to her head, which were connected to an old-looking computer equipment. The black screen was filled with dense code. At the same time, there was a rough image of the brain made up of characters on the other display. As the screen resolution slowly refreshed, the left and right brains would fill in a little progress. There was a black hole on the image, where Masha was shot. The bullet went through Masha's head and brain, barely missing the most fatal spot. Link looked at the clean, modern, and well-lit heating system and then at the old, somewhat damaged data cable connected to Masha's head. The computer terminal was connected to the monitor, and there was a plastic bag attached to the frame, which was connected to the data vault that occupied a quarter of the laboratory. The giant database hummed like a fan that was dissipating heat. It vibrated back and forth in the laboratory, reminding Link of the noise when he had just boarded Alonso's private plane to assassinate him. Advanced equipment, old terminals, the crazy elders of the Steel Council, the humans who were waiting to be resurrected, the flashing diode and indicator light in the background. The whole scene was sci-fi and absurd, with a strong contrast. As the brain on the screen was filled with green, all the memories were extracted. The machinery elder devoted himself to the experiment and mumbled to himself in his madness. Different electrical signals stimulate the brain and the cortex, collect the current feedback of the brain, analyze the electrical signals, transform them into data of the five senses, and store them in the terminal. The next step is to remove the brain's memory and redivide it. The machinery elder rubbed his hands excitedly and came to the computer equipment. The mechanical hands typed on the keyboard, and lines of code flashed across the screen like a waterfall. After that, the machinery faith elder went to the side of the heater and performed various complicated operations on the instrument, debugging it while paying attention to the numbers on the instrument. The reflex strength of each region of the brain is different. To erase memories, I have to use electric stimulation of different specifications. Only an electric current of appropriate strength could completely eliminate the memory reflections stored in the brain cells and nerves. However, if the current is wrong, it will cause permanent and irreversible damage to the brain, and some of the brain functions will be lost. The laughter of the machinery faith's elder was shrill, and coupled with the electronic voice without any cadence, it sounded emotionless and creepy. Link glanced at John. Seeing that his expression was normal, he let out a sigh of relief. After all, John was a wife-doting maniac. As long as it was related to his wife Marcia, it was hard for him to keep his mind. However, after hearing the crazy words of the machinery faith's elder, John did not say anything. He did not even show any expression. Link looked at the time. It was already 3 in the morning. They had been in the city for more than an hour. Bang! 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 A set current followed the discharge pointer hovering above the skull and hit the skull. Masha, who was lying on the heated stove, would have spasms every time she was electrocuted. Although John's face was expressionless, Link knew that he must be heartbroken. Link didn't have much of a connection with Marcia. Even as a bystander, he could feel the tension of having no way back after his memory was cleared. He also felt a complicated anticipation that he didn't dare to show. As the person involved, John would only feel more conflicted at this moment. But now, she was holding it in as if nothing had happened. Her strong willpower and control were beyond Link's reach. The core energy in the machine elder's body was activated. The pure blue core energy flowed through the energy carrier and continuously provided surging power. Now, I only need to automatically set up the brain's division. The machinery elder did not do it personally. The brain image on the screen automatically tried out various solutions. The processing frequency increased greatly, and the noise in the laboratory became louder and louder, as if an aircraft engine had been stuffed in. Every second in the laboratory felt like a year. Although he had gone through a series of operations, the actual time had not even exceeded 10 minutes. Very quickly, the computer went through a lot of calculations and came up with the best solution for the division of the brain. The machinery elder shrugged his shoulders, looking particularly excited. Now there's only the last part left, the data injection. All the memory data will be loaded into the brain through the newly set area. The part that was shot and necrotic will be completely abandoned, but all functions will be guaranteed to function normally. Now, it's time to witness a great miracle, the first case of vegetative state recovery in the Holy City, without any medical technology, is entirely based on the power of data technology. As the machinery elder pressed the button, the memory data stored in the database was transmitted through the data cable connected to the head. The data was once again converted into an electric signal and returned to the brain. John's eyes suddenly widened as he stared at his wife, whose facial features were slightly trembling. This was the first time in 5 years that he had seen the change in his wife's facial muscles. A sour feeling welled up from the bottom of his heart, and John used his steel-like willpower to suppress his gradually agitated emotions. Link also craned his neck to watch. This was the NPC resurrection method that he had mentioned before. Extracting the consciousness of the dead NPC, using the cloned body as a carrier, the consciousness and memory of the NPC were re-injected into the brain. This complicated plan was none other than the Mech City's Eternal Life Plan. The city was heavily guarded, and it was a rare opportunity for him to be here with John. He was determined to succeed in the project. As an NPC in the game Fate, the most important thing to Link was his life. As long as he could get his hands on Project Eternal Life, he would have the key information on resurrection and one more trump card. Dave, who was standing at the back, could not help but stand on his tiptoes, curious about the situation in front. After all, extracting the memory and consciousness of a person in a vegetative state, modifying the format of the brain, and then re-injecting it was simply unheard of. Lin Kei's eyes darted between the heater and the computer screen. Right now, 13% of the memories have been injected into the left brain and 18% into the right brain. At the current speed, all the memories would be loaded in 3 minutes, and Masha, who had been unconscious for 5 years, would wake up. To Link, this meant that the main part of the day's mission had come to an end. Next up was the escape and additional rewards. Time was ticking away. When both the percentages on the screen reached 100%, several lines of code flashed, and everything ended. The machinery elder excitedly ran to the front of the heater and carefully checked the various physiological signs on the panel. Her heartbeat returned to normal, her brain activity signals gradually recovered, and her body began to wake up. Masha's eyelashes were still trembling. Her eyes were still closed, but her eyeballs were still moving. As her blood flow accelerated, Masha's face flushed red, and she gradually regained feeling in her limbs. The machinery elder monitored the numbers and tapped on the control panel. This battery is too weak. It can't produce dream force at this level. A syringe appeared on the inside of the thermometer, which injected the energy needed for the human body into the vein. Marsha's heart started beating faster and stronger as the syringe was injected. Her breathing became stronger from her sleeping state. Hehe, this is a qualified battery. I need to sort out the experimental data and information this time. The machinery elder ran to the computer on the side and began to sort out the experimental data. Link turned back and glanced at Dave. He nodded at Dave. Once Masha woke up and saw John for the first time, she would definitely scream and reveal her identity. He was now on high alert, like a beast eyeing its prey, waiting for the order to attack. And this order was the awakening of Masha. Masha slowly opened her eyes. The light in the lab dazzled her eyes, and she vaguely saw a figure in front of her. Suddenly, a system notification popped up. Attention, John's condition is greatly improved. The system's sudden notification left Link scratching his head in confusion. How could John's strength increase so much for no reason? But when he used detection on John, he was surprised to find something new in the information card. John's talent pain suddenly had an additional status. Compare Wings when with his wife Marsha, John's strength is increased by 50%. Link was dumbfounded. This talent is ridiculous, not only is he strong, but he's also torturing dogs. Chapter 384 A Fierce Battle Against the Floating Mech City. It turned out that this was the ultimate state of the number one assassin, John, with his thick eyebrows and big eyes. What a good fellow. Link finally understood why the mainframe wanted John dead so badly. This guy's existence violated the law of balance in the game. He was already a legendary NPC, and now that his wife was alive, his talent by eye was even stronger than the bug commander given by the S-rank mission. It was not just a little stronger. After activating the matchwing talent, John's strength leaped over the other two legendary NPCs on Wasteland Planet. However, after thinking about it, Link felt that it was of little value. First of all, this talent could only be activated when John and Marcia were together. But every time John went out for a mission, did he have to bring the weak Marcia with him? This was obviously unrealistic. After Link's mental breakdown, he finally came to a conclusion after some in-depth analysis. John's talent might look impressive on paper, but it was flashy and useless. As the representative of his beloved wife, how could John put Marcia in danger just to improve his strength? After analyzing, Link regained his confidence. In comparison, his Swarm Commander talent was stronger, at least it could cover a longer time. After all, for a man, being strong was only temporary. Lasting was more important. Masha slowly got used to the light and blinked as she tried to open her eyes. The memories of the last time were still on Overwatch Island. Her husband, John, was teaching the young talents who came to challenge her on the island while he cooked at home. But suddenly, a black shadow flitted past the window outside the kitchen, followed by a gunshot. With a burst of glass shattering, he lost consciousness. Masha suddenly raised her hand to touch her forehead and found a peanut-sized depression on the left side of her forehead. Masha's mind went blank. There was still a bullet hole in her head. She couldn't tell if she was alive or dead. However, the moment she put down her hand, she saw John, who had a full beard and a weathered face, standing at the side. John, who always had a cold and emotionless image, was now as gentle as water in front of his wife. His eyes were moist and kept turning. Masha's eyes were wide open as if she had been struck by lightning. The two of them stared at each other in a daze. The machinery elder sat in front of the computer with his back facing the crowd, his shoulders trembling. On the basis of the immortality plan, he had innocuously solved the problem of the resurrection of vegetative people, adding a heavy stroke to the immortality plan and filling in the gap. Link and Dave seemed like outsiders. They didn't know whether to do anything or just watch. Marcia's eyes reddened, and she reached out with a trembling hand to touch John's face. He had only seen darkness, but why did John look so haggard? Her long hair, which she usually took care of for him every day after she woke up, was now messily hanging at his temples. His clean and refreshing face was also covered by a beard, especially the light in his eyes, which seemed to be covered by sadness and was dim and unclear. "John, is that you?" Masha asked in a trembling voice. John's lips twitched when he heard the strange yet familiar voice, and his eyes became slightly wet. Just as the two of them were about to confess their feelings, a mechanical voice interrupted them. "It's a success. The data has been successfully organized. The completeness of the Eternal Life Plan will go up another level. Bypassing medical treatment and directly solving the problem of vegetable recovery, machines are really omnipotent." The machinery elder laughed. The machinery elder turned around abruptly and saw the mechanical warriors and the resurrected experimentals hugging each other. His brain seemed to have encountered an obstacle, and he was unable to decipher the meaning of the contents of the images seen by his mechanical eyes. Link entered the vision of the bug commander and controlled the spy mice under the laboratory building to attack the laboratory upstairs. "All right, can you press the pause button first? We have more important things to do now." As soon as Link finished speaking, the two revolving rifles on the exoskeleton armor were already aimed at the elder. Immediately after, the muzzles of the revolving rifles spat out bright flames like two fierce fire dragons. John's movements were greatly improved under the blessing of Matchwing. After 5 years of hard work, he had finally reunited with his beloved wife after experiencing countless dangers and endless ups and downs. This time, he would not allow Masha to be harmed. If anyone wanted to hurt Masha, John would have to kill them. John and Masha were soul mates, and they could understand each other with just one look. Marcia didn't ask what was going on. She quickly hid in the nutrition cabin on the back of John's exoskeleton armor. Although the robot elder was stuck for a moment while analyzing the robot warriors and experimentals, he reacted immediately when he saw the strong hostility from Link's spinning gun. The fire dragons on his shoulders roared, and the flames from the muzzles lit up the entire laboratory. Dozens of pieces of armor, big and small, suddenly popped out of the machine elder's body and formed a huge explosion-proof shield in the air. Countless bullets hit the armor, creating explosions and screeches, but they couldn't penetrate the iron wall formed by the palm-sized armor. This scene reminded Link of his arm shield made of silver formation wall ants. However, it was clear that the elder machine's armor was stronger, and the spinning spear with its powerful impact could not even break through it. Discovered a rebellious Paishu. Sound the alarm. Battle mode on. Target locked. 1, 2, 3. The red emergency light in the laboratory building flickered, and all the cameras seemed to have turned into robots, beginning to search for targets everywhere. At the same time, the entire building was emitting a piercing alarm. Just as the machinery elder finished speaking, Link suddenly felt a strange reaction from the exoskeleton armor he was wearing. The rotary gun suddenly stopped firing, as if it had been controlled. The locks on the exoskeleton armor were all locked, firmly securing Link to the armor. The original modular operation interface had now become a program with green words on a black background. The two smoking rotary guns on his shoulders slowly turned, both muzzles aimed at Link's head. The elder had invaded Link's armor. Now, the armor had become a cage that imprisoned Link. "You guys should leave quickly. This guy can invade the armor," Link shouted. He wasn't worried that John and Dave weren't strong enough to deal with them, but that the nutrition chambers behind them still had weak women in them. Once the mecha was invaded by an indefensible radio, the mechanical elder could change the command with a single thought and kill the person in the nutrition chamber through the mecha's program. Link then activated the Heaven's Gaze. The gun barrel seemed to have been stopped by some unknown force, and the buckles that were used to fix the gun in place popped open one by one. Warframe initiating self-destruct sequence. 3,2,1. Just a second before the armor exploded, Link broke free from the exoskeleton's cage and activated haste. His speed suddenly increased by 100%, and he was like a bolt of black lightning. John and Dave quickly retreated, and their armors exploded and set off flames. "Dave, let's go." Dave was stunned for a moment. He looked back at the laboratory where the fire had disappeared and smoke was billowing. With a worried expression, he couldn't help but ask, "Is Link the only one left here? Can he deal with the elder?" "We have a nutrition chamber on our back," John laughed. "We'll only be a burden to the elder of the Iron Council." As for Link, he's confident that even if he encounters the leader of the machinery faith, he'll be able to escape. Dave only knew that Link had been invincible in the Shitu, but he had never seen him in action. He had no clear understanding of Link's strength in the black market and the rumors in the Shitu. Hearing John's high praise, she didn't know if he was comforting him or if Link really had that kind of power. Now that the alarm has sounded, the robot warriors outside will come to reinforce us very soon. Our next mission is to defeat the enemy. If I'm not mistaken, Link will be here to help us soon. The two of them ran along the corridor, and the doors of the other laboratories opened one after another. However, before he could open fire, the mechanical warriors in front of him, who were only around level 10, were punched by John with his bare hands. They were shattered along with their armor and weapons. There were also players who had previously been conscripted to help out in various laboratories. Upon hearing the explosion, he immediately perked up and focused 120% of his attention. The moment the alarm sounded, they rushed out with the robot warriors and prepared to meet up with the main NPC army. However, he did not expect that just as he stepped out, a gentle breeze passed by, and all the mechanical warriors fell to the ground. Their equipment was leaking electricity, and their limbs and bones were broken. The air was filled with the pungent smell of oil and blood. John quickly scanned the area and saw that all 6 Inhumans were here. The enemy is attacking. Our mission is to break out of the encirclement. Not only did the players not see John's movements clearly, but they couldn't even capture his trajectory. They only knew that the dozen or so robot warriors or robot explorers that had come out with them had disappeared in an instant. Although it was comparable to a bear, it still couldn't stop the players from being excited. They were actually fighting alongside the number 1 legendary killer on Wasteland Planet, John, and their fighting spirit was boiling. Where did the guild leader go? Wind Chaser Pyro and Explosive Chicken looked around. They only saw John and Dave but not Link. He'll meet up with us later. As soon as John finished speaking, his powerful 6 senses sensed the enemies swarming up from downstairs. Without a word, he was the first to rush up. Back to the battle between Link and the Machinery Elder. Your armor is powerful, right? Then try this Kazaya. Link took out the magic box pistol from his back. In order to prepare for the battle at the Machinery Palace, Link had specially prepared a lot of enhanced armor-piercing bullets to deal with the powerful metal armor of the Machinery Faith. A dagger flashed in one hand and a magic box pistol in the other. From time to time, he would control the whistle arrows. He was like a ghost, shuttling around the Machinery Elder and attacking with all kinds of methods. More than 10 seconds passed, and the armor that the Elder of the Machinery race used to defend himself was completely shattered. The damage caused by the flames and lightning arcs could be clearly seen on the machine's body. The indicator light on the Machine Elder flickered weakly, and the light gradually dimmed. Bang bang bang! Link was the last to shoot, and he directly blew up the brain in the sealed container above his head. The system notified him that he had received experience points. You have killed the Machinery Elder, level 40+, elite. You have received 60,000 experience points. The level 40 elite with 6,200 HP was easily killed by Link with his agile movements, accurate marksmanship, and ghostly close-range attacks with his flashing dagger. As the battle ended, the spy rat hiding in the vent ran down like a dumpling. Find a way to copy all the contents of all the laboratories on this floor, he ordered. At Link's command, all the spy rats scurried into the laboratories. They stuffed their shape-shifting tails into the giant memory and began to copy data. Previously, he had helped Dave and John's dream come true. Now, it was Link's turn to take care of some personal matters. The experiment content and principles in the memory were what Link had been dreaming of. Although the Machinery Faith was considered an extreme force and villain on the Wasteland Planet, their machinery knowledge, theoretical research, and technological content were the most advanced on the planet. This was exactly what Link needed. The Machinery Faith did not take the path of intelligent machinery, but instead took a strange path of human-machinery fusion. Most importantly, when Link raised the Machinery Faith to the ground in the future, all the important information and theories regarding the development of mechanics would be in his hands. At that time, he would be able to use the information to make all the mechanic players on the Wasteland work for him. In his previous life, the Freedom Federation had organized players to exterminate the Machinery Faith, and the machinery knowledge had been divided among the 3 special city governments. Therefore, the players could only work for the Freedom Federation in order to obtain more advanced theories, skills, and even blueprints. Link looked at the busy rat, his eyes shining with ambition. He smiled and said, "But now, everything is mine." In order to ensure that he had the information, Link didn't rush to meet up with John. Instead, he waited for all the spy mice to finish copying. Moreover, John now had the Matchwing's talent. He could kill anything in his way. Link didn't have to worry at all. All the spy mice were busy, because there were too few interfaces, and they even lined up. In front of Link, there were only 5 mouse agents who had nothing to do and the treasure-hunting mouse on his shoulder. Xiaobao, 5 mice, I have a mission for you. Help me move all the useful things on the enemy's body on this floor. The treasure-hunting mouse saluted Link and immediately led its followers to search the body. Treasure-seeking mouse. Hazi? The hamster. Water rat. Stinky. Bamboo rat. Link picked up a random chair and crossed his legs as he waited for the treasure-hunting mouse and its minions to return. P.S. Seeing that Wanjun stayed up all night and was still updating, please give me some monthly votes and recommendations. Chapter 385 Battle of Dawn. Link sat on the chair and waited for a while. Under the treasure-hunting mouse's command, the 5 mice wobbled in, either dragging or hugging something. Link looked at the fragments of the elder and the weapons of the robot warriors. He could not help but ask, just this much? Didn't John kill a lot of mech warriors when he left? At this moment, the treasure-hunting mouse was chattering away, saying something to the 5 mice. Soon, the 5 rats all climbed onto the larger water rat and formed a single body. Then, the treasure-hunting mouse clenched its small claws into a fist and punched. The 5 mice suddenly separated into 5 pieces. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Link finally understood what the treasure-hunting mouse meant. As it turned out, John had not adapted to the sudden increase in strength after regaining the Matchwing's talent after a few years of separation. All the mechanical warriors were blown to pieces. Therefore, other than some scattered weapons, there were no complete spoils of war. Link glanced at the spoils of war on the ground. The best quality item was the energy core of the Elder of the Iron Council. It was intact and blue in quality. Then, he pulled out 2 intact Type 1.5 beginner combat chips from the robot warrior, green quality. Finally, there were 2 white quality weapons. Looking at the materials in front of him, then looking up at the 5 mice and the leader treasure-hunting mouse standing in a row, Link suddenly had a bold idea. I've just unlocked the coupling function, and I have enough materials. I'll test it out on you. The treasure-hunting mouse and the 5 mice were all stunned by Link's words. Ah? Are they going to use us for experiments? Why do I suddenly have a bad feeling? The treasure-hunting mouse was dumbfounded. Surprised face, the 5 mice reacted quickly and hid behind the treasure-hunting mouse. Underscore, underscore, underscore. Unfortunately, the size of the treasure-hunting mouse couldn't block 5 big mice at all. Link ignored the rat agents who were adding scenes for him and entered the system's fetters menu. He had already analyzed the rules before, but this was his first time actually using them. Link picked up the Elder's blue core energy with one hand and a white weapon with the other. He prepared the materials first, then chose to create a bond. After Lin K chose the coupling option, the system interface changed again. A panel with a pet icon popped up, showing the pets that Lin K currently had. Good lord, he had directly created a pet encyclopedia. The pets were arranged in order of quality. First, the white-grade pets were as follows. Sand rat, sand sculpture, vanilla mud horse, skeleton wolf, rat secret agent team, spy rat, black widow, short-haired cat, self-destructing rat. The second was the main green-grade pet. White blade sea eagle, self-destructing fly, blood slug, little pig, xiao xiaosha, xiao xiaobai, xiao du, curly-haired baboon, rubber python, fantasy vine, obsidian pioneer, fungus multicolored butterfly, hydraulic machine hippopotamus, wasteland wolf king, water arrow turtle, Alan and Mr. Kong. There were also many blue-grade pets. Invisible killer bee, silver queen ant, silver array wall ant, hellhound, treasure hunting mouse, macaw, black tornado, penguin penny, King Kong, vampire Simon, Forbes. Purple quality pets were extremely powerful and were one of Lin K's trump cards. Gargoyle, touch dragon god. At a glance, Link now had a total of 39 pets. He selected the treasure hunting mouse and the mouse secret service squad, and a system notification appeared. Treasure hunting mouse, blue, versus mouse secret service squad, white, connectivity rate was 100%. One blue and one white material is required to form the coupling. Would you like to form the coupling? Link's brows relaxed. The treasure hunting mouse and the mouse secret service squad were always together. Plus, the treasure hunting mouse was the king of mice. The probability of them being tricked was definitely high. There was also another benefit to creating comradeship. It only required materials of the corresponding level and did not cost Link's health points. Then what's there to consider? Let's go. After it was generated, the empty interface finally had the first comradeship effect: home of the brat. Home of the little ghosts, green. When the treasure hunting mouse and the 5 mice set foot in the enemy's territory together, the 5 mice will activate the destruction effect, causing irregular damage to the enemy's territory. This effect can only be used once in each territory. Link was stunned after reading the comradeship effects. This comradeship effect was really appropriate. Previously, in Weeping Valley, Treasure Hunting Mouse had led 5 of its underlings, which made it look like a local tyrant. Now that he had this bond, he had to make good use of it. Link was waiting to see how much damage the green level fetters could cause. Little treasure, since you guys have nothing to do now, I'll give you guys a task. The eyes of the treasure hunting mouse and the 5 mice lit up. The other spy mice were busy here, and they stood there doing nothing. Now that they were at war with the floating mech city, they yearned for missions. Yaaaa! The 5 mice raised their paws in celebration. Your mission is to destroy the city. I don't care what you do or how you do it. After the 5 mice heard about the mission, a hint of confusion appeared in their eyes. In the past, the missions they received were all specific, and everything was clearly stated. However, now that he had suddenly received an open mission, he didn't know where to start. The treasure hunting mouse squeaked twice with a serious face, indicating that it would complete the task. He stretched out his little foot and kicked the 5 dazed mice on their buttocks, waking up the 5 foolish fellows. The treasure hunting mouse led the 5 mice away to carry out their mission. Link continued to wait in the laboratory building. At the same time, the Silver Army ants were not idle. Under Link's control, they were carrying out a big project digging through the foundation of the laboratory building. Every spy mouse had the information and data of the laboratory's plan stored in their bodies. The death of any one of them was a loss to Link. The battle with the floating mech city had officially begun. It was obvious that the robots, mech warriors, and apostles from the city would be arriving soon. If the spy rat was allowed to move on a large scale at this time, it was likely to become a sacrifice under the artillery fire. Therefore, the best option was to escape from the city. The 150,000 Silver Army ants had a strong ability to devour metal. They easily penetrated the steel plate of the laboratory's foundation and began to advance to the next level. There were several levels under the city. Link's goal was to dig through the bottommost level and use the Silver Army ants to build a ladder to escort the spy rat out of the city. As long as he successfully landed, there would be support. Not only would the spy rat escape through this fast passage, but John and Dave would also leave from here. The spy mice that had successfully collected the data had begun to move toward the passage at the bottom of the laboratory building, and the number of waiting spy mice in line gradually decreased. Seeing this, Link stood up and exhaled. It had been 5 minutes since John's group went downstairs. The entire city had received the news of the enemy's invasion, and the mechanical army was rushing toward the experimental area. Lin Kuei picked up the mechanical warrior's assault rifle from the ground and fired at the window. Boom, boom, boom. The glass shattered like a silver bottle, and the solar panels hanging on the surface of the building were also shattered by Link. They could finally see the situation outside the building. It was 4 o'clock in the morning, dark and moonless. The lights of the mech city could be clearly seen in front of Link. The rows of mechanical warriors could be seen with the naked eye on the road. They had reflective rubber strips on their bodies and were extremely conspicuous under the illumination of the lights. They had been lining up all the way from far away. The rails and containers transporting goods were pulled to the experimental area one after another. Looking down, the entire experimental building was tightly surrounded, as if they had entered an ocean of machinery. Looking at the situation of the robot warriors continuously pouring into the building, John and Dave did not manage to break out of the siege. There were also many unmanned aircraft in the air, surrounding the entire laboratory building. At that moment, the aircrafts patrolling in the air noticed a missing piece of the surface of the building. The aircrafts in formation all flew towards Link's position. Lin Ke used his handheld assault gun and his specially made throwing knives to shoot down the aircrafts one by one. The burning aircraft fell from the sky and hit the mechanical warriors on the ground, giving Lin Ke additional EXP. Link glanced at the mechanical giant in the middle of the city. The enemies were approaching from all directions, but there was no movement at where Professor Zhao was. This kind of calm and steady attitude made Link extremely unhappy. Was he so sure that the mech ocean could deal with them that he didn't even show his face? If that's the case, then let's make things more exciting. Link immediately entered the bug commander mode. The locations of all the pets in the city appeared clearly in his consciousness. At this moment, in the location of the laboratory building, there was a cluster of starlight. It was a light formed by thousands of spy mice and 150,000 silver army ants. The silver army ants were digging their way through the city, and the spy rat was waiting anxiously, ready to escape at any moment. Under the swarm commander mode, there were still many spots of light scattered around the city. Other than the central region, which was hard to get close to, there were quite a number of them in the other 4 regions. Now, enjoy the art of explosion. Following Link's command, the tens of thousands of rats scattered around the city exploded at once. Link stood at the gap in the laboratory building and looked out. The city was suddenly filled with starlight and a loud rumble. The glass of the building shattered, the hub pipes burst into flames, and the lights in the distance went out. The mechanical belt at the chassis of the machinery city stopped operating, the production lines and factories of the military factories were on fire, and the data storage base was also disturbed. On the data panels of the soldiers and apostles of the machinery faith who were fighting, error codes of signal loss or abnormal data transmission appeared. Many of the main cables and converters in the energy area's basement were also blown up, and some of the energy supply to the mechanical giants in the center and other places stopped. The city was filled with explosions. Link peeked out of the window. The explosion and the twinkling stars were extremely moving. John, Dave, and the players, who were fighting against the mech warriors on the first floor, suddenly heard the continuous explosions outside. The mech warriors fighting in front of them were also stunned and could not react in time to varying degrees. John knew without a doubt that this was the work of Link's group of self-destructing rats. John glanced outside. In his vision, there were only a dense and endless number of mechanical warriors. He did not see the spectacular scene caused by the explosion of tens of thousands of self-destructing rats. He felt a little regretful. Boom! The tremors caused by the explosion came from the ground in the form of shockwaves. John and Dave were prepared, knowing that Link had made his move. However, the 6 players' faces were pale. They had no idea what was going on, and they thought that the city had deployed some kind of ultimate weapon like a Gundam. There are so many warriors from the machinery faith. How long will it take for them to finish killing? Even though they were all outstanding players and guild leaders, they were still very powerful. However, this was the first time they had experienced such a realistic battle of 1 against 10,000. The vice president of the Kallen Heart Guild, Yayao Ling, was a psychic mutant. At this moment, her face was pale because she had used too much psychic power. She leaned behind a cover to rest and laughed at herself. I feel like this battle is basically a cut scene. The number of kills we've killed together isn't even as many as the painters in a few breaths. Don't compare yourself to the artist. You can't even compare yourself to Dave, ahoho. What made the 6 of them despair the most was that the EXP gained after killing was based on contribution points. Because they did not have any contribution points, they did not get any EXP at all. They only received a little EXP from the players' joint attack, which had to be divided among the 6 of them. Sometimes, the more enemies one had, the more experience one could gain. The robot warriors surrounded the building so tightly that not even a drop of water could leak through. The moment they revealed their heads, they would be suppressed by tons of firepower. Under such circumstances, it was already considered good if they were not injured. They did not even think of killing and cutting grass in all directions. Link stood at the gap in the laboratory building and saw the mechanical reinforcements coming towards the experimental area. After seeing the explosion, he immediately turned back to support the explosion. The mechanical warriors on the transport lines and roads were also diverted to the other 3 zones. The energy zone, the military factory, and the data storage base were all important parts of the city. There were many places that had lost their circuits due to explosions or fires. There was a high chance that there were still enemies there, so they had to split up to rescue them. Otherwise, the entire city would be in danger. As the mech warriors and robots rushed to other places to help, the pressure on the experimental area was greatly reduced. Link looked at the mechanical giant in the center and muttered to himself, "You're still not going to show yourself." At that moment, Link noticed a golden glow under the mechanical giant in the distance. As if a door had been opened, light emerged and a long shadow was cast. At the same time, the air trembled, and the golden light gradually climbed up the giant gear of the mechanical giant. This powerful energy circled the gear once, and most of the energy was condensed at the upper and lower ends. Suddenly, the energy gathered at the top and bottom of the gear gathered in the middle and pulled out a huge vertical eye. The golden light illuminated the entire city and dispelled the darkness. The golden eye adjusted its focus and finally shone on the laboratory building where Link was. Link knew that this was the leader of the city, Professor Zhao. He had found him. A low-level structure. The majestic voice reverberated through the city with a disdainful tone. Chapter 386, Killing Their Way Through the City. Humph! Link laughed in disdain, not at all intimidated by Dr. Zhao's appearance. The mechanical golden eye was like a sun. At this moment, the vertical eye was focused on the laboratory building. The solar panels on the outer wall of the building absorbed a large amount of light energy, and at the same time, reflected an equally strong light. Soon, Link saw a black shadow cut through the light and stood in front of the golden vertical eye. Its huge shadow spread from the mechanical giant a few kilometers away to the building Link was in. The dazzling golden light was also split into 2 because of Professor Zhao's presence. From a long distance, Dr. Zhao's shadow was magnified by the golden vertical eye and covered the entire laboratory building. Link stared at Dr. Zhao, who was a few kilometers away. He could feel that the man was looking at him too. This distance was extremely close to the leader of the machinery faith. So, Link raised his fist. He looked at the shadow in the distance. He suddenly pointed his middle finger. "I'll wait for you here." After saying that, he disappeared through the gap. After a round of provocation, Link entered Swarm Commander mode. He found that the Silver Army ants had already dug through the base of the floating mech city. They were forming a ladder and starting to release the spy rats into the desert. At this speed, the spy rat would land soon. After entering the desert, Link had already arranged for the tentacles dragon to pick up the little ones. They returned to the castle through the cave dug by the tentacles dragon. Link then checked on the treasure-hunting mouse and the 5 mice. He realized that they had been loitering around the data storage area and were now heading towards the forbidden area where the mechanical giant, Professor Zhao, lived. This group of guys, are they going to play this big? Thinking of the restraints of Home of the Brats, Link was actually looking forward to it. Now, the second phase is over. It's time to enter the evacuation phase. Link exited his bug commander status and took the elevator down. As the elevator descended from the top floor, Link could already hear the heavy rain of gunshots coming from below. Link furrowed his brows. This was far more intense than when he was fighting with the gangs in Chitu. John, Dave, and the 6 players had actually managed to stop the mechanical army under such firepower, not letting them rush into the building. They really had some skills. The number on the elevator changed from 2 to 1 and slowly stopped. The sound of gunfire outside was deafening. The elevator door, which was a few centimeters thick, could not stop the sound at all. Ding! The elevator's notification sounded, but it was completely drowned out by the sound of gunfire. When the elevator door opened, Link saw the gunfire like a dragon, lighting up the dark hall. The muzzle of the gun flickered. Link walked out of the elevator and glanced through the fire. His current position was between the mechanical army and the temporary stronghold of John and Dave. It's better to come at the right time than to come early. Let me be the game breaker. The advancement of the mechanical army was extremely orderly. Although John could take advantage of the chaos to enter the crowd and kill in all directions, as the number of the mechanical army increased, the mechanical army in the battle group quickly analyzed John and Dave's characteristics. John's body was as fast as a ghost. Dave's mech had strong firepower, and it was also equipped with howitzer and cluster bombs that could cause AoE damage. It also had many auxiliary functions against machinery. The previous few attempts had all ended in failure. Therefore, this time, the battle team changed their tactics. The fighting robots took the lead and were responsible for fire suppression. The mechanical warrior army followed closely behind and began to push forward, continuously compressing the enemy's survival circle. Then, he would arrange for a small force to infiltrate from the side, thus forming a corner position, so that the enemy could not care about the head and tail. A total of 8 enemies were found after the scan. The enemy in the mech had countermeasures and could not be detected, while the other enemy was as fast as a ghost. There was no signal detected in the scan at all, as if he had evaporated from the world, but he was real. Link hid in the dark and took a glance. The firepower of the mechanical army was terrifyingly dense. Even John did not dare to charge directly. Instead, he found ways to appear and disappear from the side, disrupting the formation and then running away. This could only slow down the enemy's advancement. Link took out his flash dagger, took a deep breath, and walked out from the back of the elevator. Wang! With a sharp sound, the flash dagger left his hand and flew towards the enemy formation. The players who were hiding behind cover saw a figure suddenly appear on the wall under the gunfire. But the next second, the figure disappeared from the wall, as if it had just been an illusion. Link used his flash dagger to bypass the robot army at the front line and stabbed it into the chest of one of the robot warriors. What followed was a heart-wrenching scream, but it only lasted for a moment before it was quickly drowned out by the gunshots. Link's figure suddenly appeared in the crowd of robot warriors and stabbed them in the back. The bonus effect of the flash dagger and the additional damage from the weak point attack instantly killed the mechanical warrior. Just as the mechanical army was in a state of shock, Link roared. The ultimate technique he'd created after learning the military killing fist, Apocalypse, was unleashed. The ground with a diameter of 20 meters surged, and the air force tore the floor apart and exploded from the ground. Boom, boom, boom. The explosion spread out in a ring shape. When the mechanical warriors were attacked, their exoskeleton armor would either be shattered or their bodies would be injured and their limbs would be broken. The level of the mechanical warriors was within the range of 10-20, and their HP was generally between 800-1000. Apocalypse dealt 600 damage to all enemies within 20 meters. At the same time, it also had an additional deterrence effect. Right now, these robot warriors were basically in a critical state. Link immediately activated the Heaven's Son's insight and prepared to harvest the death energy to accumulate blood rage. The shouting gunfire instantly decreased by half, and the dense firepower suppression effect was only left with 10-20%. The fighting robots in the front row had not reacted yet, and they were still shooting stupidly. By the time the combat robots detected the presence of enemies in the team behind them, Link had already taken their lives with Throat Crusher and Flash Dagger in hand. There was no living person within 20 meters. At this point, Link had already accumulated 30 stacks of Blood Rage. Blood Rage, 30 stacks. Your attack, movement speed, and resistance are increased by 150%. Stackable. Lasts for 10 minutes. Seeing that Link had appeared to break the situation, John, who had been hiding in the dark, didn't waste time. He immediately appeared and attacked. The combat robots aimed their guns at Link, but all they saw was an evil smile on his face. "It's still too early to catch me." In the next second, the combat robot's camera kept turning. It could only vaguely capture Link's traces. The system program had prepared to give the order to shoot several times, but it had lost capture. The target in front of it had automatically locked onto the robot warrior. The system had intervened to stop the shooting to avoid accidental injury. Then, it kept switching between capture, prepare to shoot, capture missing, and lock. The players hiding in the dark realized that the situation had changed. The heavy fire suppression had disappeared without a trace, like a pause button had been pressed on a tape that was playing. The players looked at each other and boldly poked their heads out from behind their covers. However, the next second, the 6 knowledgeable players were all dumbfounded. Link darted through the crowd, easily killing an enemy each time. Although the players could not see Lin Kei's actions, they could see that the mechanical warriors who were falling to the ground were clutching their necks. This was proof of Lin Kei's powerful attack power and instant kill ability. Is this Link's true strength? I admire you. This damage is too terrifying. It takes half a day's effort for the 6 of us to kill a single robot warrior. He's only going to be killed by Link in seconds. At this moment, in the eyes of the 6 players, the ferocious mechanical warrior had instantly turned into a slow-witted goose. His panicked appearance was extremely similar to a child who had lost his parents. Wind-chasing Pro also rubbed her head, her eyes dull. How did Boss become so powerful in just 3 months? Even Wind, who had followed Link for the longest time, didn't expect Link to be so powerful, let alone the others. How terrifying! When I fought with these robot warriors just now, each of them had around 800 to 1000 HP. Link killed each of them in one hit, which means that Link's attack power has completely covered the HP of the robot warriors. His damage is at least above 1000. Mo Bei Lang's boss Lang Feng analyzed. The pale-faced Yayao who was resting on the side couldn't help but touch her neck and sighed, "Oh my god, if you hit me with this damage, even 2 of me wouldn't be enough to kill you." Link may be at the commander tier, but he doesn't look like he's at a disadvantage when he's fighting with John, who's at the legendary tier. While the players were still in awe, the smart player, Bombing Chicken, had already turned on the video recording function and recorded the scene of Link and John killing the enemy together. Even the silly words of the famous players were recorded. Dave, who was on the other side of the defense, suddenly found that the pressure had been greatly reduced. After finishing off the enemy in front of him, he ran over to take a look. With the help of the night vision device, he saw a river of blood in the hall, and the ground was covered with the corpses of the Machinery Faith members. In the distance, 2 undetectable phantoms seemed to be singing and dancing in the dark space, like the Grim Reaper harvesting souls under the dance. Dave was in a daze for a moment. He couldn't even tell which one was the #1 assassin on Wasteland Planet, John, and which one was the new king of Shtu, Link. On the front line, Link and John were killing in all directions. With the combined strength of the 2 of them, they directly crushed the enemies from the Machinery Faith who entered the hall. The 2 of them seemed to be in a heated argument. From breaking the formation in the beginning, it had now become a competition to see who could kill more people. They wanted to determine the winner through the mechanical warrior in front of them. A few months ago, on Alongso's private plane, John had already experienced Link's terrifying combat talent. The more they fought, the stronger and braver he became. But today, Link's aura had been weaker than his at the beginning, but now it was thick with death energy, like a god of war. If John were to close his eyes and feel it only by aura, he had no doubt that a god who had descended to the human world was standing in front of him. He'd learned the military killing fist from Li Zijun, but he'd elevated the use of death energy to the level of increasing strength. It was born from the military killing fist, but it was better than it. One could only say that Link's comprehension and strength could be considered top tier on the entire wasteland planet. If he continued to grow, he might be able to reach the legendary realm. While John was still in a daze, Link had already killed all the members of the machinery faith in the hall. Then, he held a round object that looked like a bomb in his hand, pressed a button, and threw it out. He also closed the door of the laboratory building. 2 seconds later, there was a strong buzzing sound from outside, accompanied by light blue pulse radiation. All the robots within 100 meters of the laboratory building were paralyzed. The exoskeleton armors and mechanical weapons of the mechanical warriors and mechanical apostles were also out of order and could not be restarted. For a moment, the laboratory building where the gunslinger was silent except for Link's footsteps, which echoed in the hall. An electronic pulse bomb. John could not help but ask. Link smiled and nodded. I've already sent the Silver Army ants to dig through the city. All the spy mice have landed. Now, it's your turn. After the massacre just now, Link's blood rage had already reached the 70th floor. He was 1 floor away from breaking the previous record. Actually, the number of robot warriors in the hall was completely sufficient. It was a pity that John had been stealing his monsters. Link found that he couldn't absorb the death aura of the enemies John had killed with the Heaven's Insight. At the same time, because robots were not living beings, there would not be any death energy produced after they were destroyed. Lin Ke had killed his way from the elevator to the entrance of the building, but he had only accumulated 70 stacks of HP. Back at the defensive position, Link said, I can't buy much time now, follow me. The players felt that Link's aura was different now. He gave off a terrifying feeling. Some players used Detect on Link, only to find that they could only see his level, class, identity, and rating. The HP that he could see earlier had now become a question mark. This was set by Link on purpose, mainly because he didn't want to expose himself too early after receiving the Bug Commander talent. Players had a big mouth, and it was possible that other NPCs or powers would hear them if they brought up this matter. At the same time, Link was trying to make himself more mysterious. After all, taking the initiative to reveal himself definitely wasn't as alluring as when one was trying to reject him. Link brought everyone to the entrance of the Silver Army Ants tunnel. They could see a hole about 2 meters wide with their naked eyes. It led straight to the pitch-black ground. John, Dave, you guys go first. In the desert, you will follow the spy rats and they will guide you into the cave. What about you? John suddenly asked. Judging from Link's behavior today, he didn't seem to want to leave so soon. Moreover, John didn't find any signs of the treasure-hunting mouse on Link. This further confirmed his guess that Link had another idea. Me? I'm going to stay here for a while longer. It's not easy for me to come to the city, and I'm going to waste my time with the famous mechanical pioneers. Link's words were filled with confidence, and his lips curled up slightly in a sinister manner. The players at the side were stunned. Dr. Zhao, the pioneer of machinery, the leader of the machinery faith. Was Link going to stay in the city alone and fight against tens of thousands of members of the Church of Machinery, the elder of the Iron Council, and a leader? They wanted to kill their way through the city? This person must be crazy. Chapter 387 The Arrival of the Pioneers. John was silent for a moment before opening the nutrition chamber on his body. Masha took a deep breath and opened her eyes. When she saw her husband, she could no longer hold back her tears and hugged John. John's eyes were gentle. He didn't mind Marsha's wet body at all. He patted her back and comforted her, all right, it's all in the past now. It's fine, Ying Luo. The legendary killer who had just reaped lives with a murderous aura had now become a gentle, delicate, and considerate husband. The 6 players looked at each other. This mission was too much. The players were like tools throughout the whole process. They didn't get much EXP from killing monsters and were completely reduced to the background for Link and John. Now, he was playing this trick again. He was simply tricking the dog into coming in to kill it. Woo. His mouth was already full. This entire piece of Ching dog food was too big and he couldn't eat it. John gently wiped the tears from the corner of his wife's eyes with the back of his hand. There was no hurry or impatience in his tone. Masha, you and Dave will leave the mech city later. Wait for me at the castle of Wind Howl. Masha was stunned. You're not coming with us. I still have some matters to settle. I'll immediately return to find you after I'm done. Masha's expression gradually eased. She did not pester nor cry, but just reached out and dusted off John's shoulder. Come back soon, I'll wait for you. N. John nodded heavily. He had tried every possible way to extend Marcia's life for 5 years. No matter how desperate the situation was, he couldn't give up. Finally, he had been waiting for this. I'll wait for you. John looked at Dave again, his expression solemn and sincere. I'm counting on you. Dave knew that he had a heavy responsibility. Don't worry. As long as I'm still breathing, I will never let your wife get hurt. All right, you guys should hurry up and leave now, or you won't be able to leave later. Link rolled up his sleeves, and the multifunctional combat suit's claws popped out, fastening itself to Dave's mech. Take your men and go down quickly. I've already arranged for the spy mouse to pick you up. Dave knew that now was not the time to be sad. Carrying the nutrition chamber, he held onto Masha with his mech arm and jumped out of the gap. Link's hook rope could withstand several tons of weight. The weight of a mech and 3 people was nothing. Soon, the number on the monitor on the arm's hook reached 121, and the number stopped increasing. It had clearly hit the bottom. Link waited for 10 seconds before retracting his hook. He was extremely fast and did not encounter any obstacles. Ding! Ding! With a crisp sound, the hook sank into the container. Link's gaze focused on the 6 players. You guys should leave too. The following scene is not something you can handle. Your next task is to escort Dave and his men back to Howling Heights. As Link gave the mission, some players were ecstatic, but some were still unsatisfied. When they were hiding behind the cover, they saw the strange scene of the mechanical giant in the center of the city. It was obvious that the leader of the machinery faith was coming out. What came next was an evenly matched battle, which was the most exciting part of today's infiltration. Wind-chasing PRO took the lead and said, President, I'm a member of the Lin Financial Group and the leader of the Kylan Hall. I've been following you since the time of the Link Gang. I can't leave you at your most dangerous time. You can say that I disobeyed your order, or that I can't complete the task. Today, I'll stay and advance and retreat with you. The other Cold Blade also stood out with his gun. Although I have nothing to do with President Lin, I still want to stay and gain some knowledge. Anyway, we can be resurrected even if we die, so it's not a big deal. All of Lang Feng's equipment had been covered by insurance. If he died, he would not lose anything. However, it would be a huge loss if they missed a battle between leaders. I'll stay too. Elder Lin is an elder of the Moon Shadow Council. I'll follow you no matter what. Bombarding Chicken raised his hand and said hurriedly. After all, he was now a photographer who had to record everything that happened in the city. With the quality of the video, it would definitely attract a lot of attention if it was posted on the forum. If there were people who wanted to participate, there would naturally be people who wanted to leave. The guildmaster of the Sentimental Guild, Tangju, had upgraded his mechanical equipment to green grade after his ascension. As a mechanic player, it was beyond his expectations to be able to obtain a green grade mechanic modified weapon. After entering the floating mech city, Tangju had been trying to buy weapon insurance from the game store. However, the system kept telling him that he was in the middle of a high-level mission and that he could not buy it. If he could buy weapon insurance, Tangju would leave it behind no matter what. But now, he had chosen to stay. He did not have the confidence to survive in the face of the mech warriors that were as vast as the sea and had fierce firepower. Moreover, he was the only mechanic among the 6 of them. Now that he had obtained a green-grade mechanical weapon, it would make his future path much easier. But if they stayed, there was a high chance that they would lose everything. The one who wanted to leave was also the vice president of the Jialan Heart Guild, Yao Ling. He was an esper with telekinesis, and he had used up all his energy in the battle just now. A telekinesis master without energy was not even as useful as a robot, and they would only be a burden if they stayed. As for Lost Mon, he didn't say anything about the team. Although Link had said that his choice would not affect the mission reward, he could not confirm whether his choice would affect Link's favorability. Looking at the players' conflicted thoughts, fighting over all kinds of choices like walking on a tightrope, Link waited anxiously. He really wanted to kick them all off the game. When Link spoke, he didn't think about it at all. He just felt that the players would only be cannon fodder and wouldn't be of any use. Instead of dying in vain, it was better to go down and protect Dave and Masha. He didn't expect that with such a simple sentence, these players would act like they were walking on tightrope. None of them dared to answer, and they even expressed their loyalty. It seemed that sometimes, 9 years of compulsory education was not a good thing. These players had thought much more than the original author when it came to reading comprehension. Seeing this, Link decided, since the 3 of you have spoken, then Drifting, Cold Blade, and Bombarding Chicken will stay behind. The remaining 3 will immediately protect Dave and his team. Do it now, and those who disobey will have their mission rewards cancelled. Link's words prompted the players to act immediately. If you don't hand in your reading comprehension paper now, you won't even get any marks. Link hooked Tangju, Lost Mon, and Yao's spirit system, then quickly lowered the 3 of them into the desert. What I said just now is the truth. I won't give you any extra rewards if you stay here. And I won't be able to take care of you guys when I get into action, so you'd better find a safe place to stay. The 3 remaining players did not complain after learning that there were no additional rewards. The 3 of them discussed for a while and prepared to go to the rooftop of the laboratory building. Firstly, there was a path from the building to the rooftop. There was only a staircase, so they would be safe as long as they could guard it. Secondly, they had a good view from the rooftop. They could see further from a high place. When Link, John, and the leader of the Machinery Faith started fighting, they would be able to see the situation better. Thirdly, the escape hole was also in the laboratory building. If anything happened, they could jump down from the corner of the first floor at any time. After the players left, Link retracted his claw and looked at John. Didn't you come here to resurrect Masha? Why didn't you leave with us? Why did you stay? John chuckled. That's because I also want to meet the leader of the Machinery Faith. It's not easy for me to come here. It'll be a pity if I don't get to meet him. I'd like to see what the pioneer who created the Eternal Life Plan looks like. Although John said that, Link knew that he did not stay to meet the mechanical pioneers but to protect him. Link chuckled. He thought that if Marcia was still around and John had the high damage from the Matchwings talent, he wouldn't be safe. But now that Masha was gone and Matchwings couldn't be activated, John's strength was greatly reduced. It was hard to say who would protect who. Link glanced at John and used his consciousness to open his information card. But the next second, Link was dumbfounded. F***CK. The Matchwings talent was gone, but John had another talent called Yearning. Longing. When John and Marcia are separated, John regains power from his longing. All damage dealt is increased by 50%. Good fellow. I'm F***ing direct, my good fellow. This person must be a bug. In short, he didn't lose out in both front and back hands, but he insisted on adding this 50% damage. Link finally understood why Masha had been killed. This was a plot kill. Buzz. The 2 of them felt a strange spatial tremor at the same time, accompanied by a heavy landing sound on the ground. The ground trembled with a rumble. Whoo! A strong gust of wind blew in from outside the laboratory building, and the door was blown open. Link and John, who were in the corner, could even feel the strong wind blowing in their faces. The two of them looked at each other and saw the seriousness in each other's eyes. The voice and the pressure just now were definitely the leader of the machinery faith, Dr. Zhao. "The Iron Council's elder is yours," said Link. "I'll take Professor Zhao." John immediately nodded. He had no interest in Dr. Zhao to begin with. The main reason he stayed behind was to protect Link. After all, they were causing trouble in the base of the machinery faith, and the other party might have some trump cards that were difficult to deal with. At this time, two people were definitely better than one. The Iron Dukedom's elder was much easier to deal with. This way, he could also divert his attention to Link's situation. Link and John walked out side by side. Under Link's control, the Silver Army ant sneaked into the ground like a time bomb, waiting for the best time to appear. The two of them walked out of the laboratory building. Many of the mechanical warriors that Link had previously rewarded with a pulse signal bomb were still lying on the ground or leaning on the side. The battlefront had been filled with new combat robots and mech warriors, and this time, they finally sent out the mechanical elders of the Steel Council. Some of them were piloting mechs that were 7 to 8 meters tall, some of them were of normal height but had an exaggerated and disproportionate mechanical fist assembled on their arms, and there was even a Bayan who was stepping on an aircraft. In front of them was a flying saucer-like device. In the open cockpit in the center of the flying saucer sat a humanoid creature wearing a terrifying skull metal helmet. Purple energy radiated outward from the eye sockets and mouth of the skeleton. The humanoid creature's entire body was made up of machinery, but other than the metal material, the size and proportion of its limbs were no different from that of a normal human. It looked as if the surface of its skin was covered with a film of metallic luster. In the hands of the humanoid creature, there was a golden scepter. The top of the scepter was protected by a purple energy core made of metal. Its shape was unique, like the stars in the night sky and the full moon. What was even more unbelievable was that there were 4 scaly metal tentacles on the back of the humanoid creature. The tip of each tentacle had a sharp tip, like the poisonous sting on the tip of a scorpion's tail. This was the leader of the entire machinery faith, the pioneer Professor Zhao. Link was expressionless, but John couldn't help but frown. He couldn't help but ask in a low voice, "Is this the leader of the machinery faith, Professor Zhao? Why is it so different from what I imagined?" "What did you imagine it to be?" asked Link. "In my mind, Dr. Zhao should be similar to the machinery elder I saw in the laboratory building today. His brain should be placed in a glass container, followed by dense data lines. The so-called brain in a jar is just the most basic way of placing it. The mechanical pioneer in front of us can already place his brain under a specially made helmet, and the base of the brain is directly connected to the digital circuit board." Hearing Link's explanation, John finally understood. He had still underestimated the abilities of the mechanical creatures and the technological level of the machinery faith. Such a precise design and structure far exceeded the technological level of the other countries. It was worthy of being the highest technology on the entire wasteland. Professor Zhao, who was sitting in the flying saucer, scanned John's body and quickly recognized him. "It's an honor for the former #1 assassin on Wasteland Planet, John, to visit the city." The mechanical pioneer Professor Zhao's voice only had a slight mechanical feel to it, and the rise and fall of his voice was no different from a normal person's. "He escaped from Shandu 40 years ago and built this mech city from scratch. It's magnificent to see it here today," John replied. Hearing this, Link couldn't help but laugh. One could only say that it was rigorous or the mechanical pioneers were rigorous. The use of the word before was very essential. The next second, the mechanical pioneers were attracted by Link's laughter and began scanning. However, this time, the mechanical pioneers did not say Link's name immediately. "You can't guess?" Link asked arrogantly. The mechanical pioneer was not shocked at all. He was not angered by Link's words at all. "Although you're using a fake identity," the mechanical pioneer said after a while, "based on your behavior, language, and combat habits, you match up to 99.5% with the new king of the Shudu, Link. Link was stunned for a moment. He turned off the mask and said, "It's boring. P.S. Recommended a book by a friend, Senior Sister is so poisonous. Author, I'm a little shamey." The little monk who had entered the spirited mountain with great difficulty was suddenly brought down the mountain by a senior sister. His senior sister, who was infatuated with him, was a female monster that couldn't be more poisonous. "Senior sister, you're so vicious, what should I do?" Chapter 388 The God of Machinery. Link shot a glance at John and said, "You're saying that only the top disguise masters on the entire wasteland can see through this holographic human skin mask?" John's expression did not change. He slowly said, "He didn't see through the human skin mask, he only saw through your actions. That's why I said that if you want to go far on the path of disguising, you need more practice." After listening to the conversation between the two, the mechanical pioneer sized them up with interest and said, "When I saw you two, an idea suddenly popped up in my mind. As long as I can kill the two of you, I can clone two complete bodies. By then, I can easily control the Sand City with the clones." The purple energy under Dr. Zhao's skeletal helmet surged out, and he said excitedly, "I'm really grateful that your arrival has solved the big problem of the church's attack on Shandu." "You're that confident that you can kill us?" Link sneered. Dr. Zhao opened his arms, and the golden scepter's energy spread throughout his body, creating purple energy ripples with his mechanical body as the center. The green and blue energy cores of all the robots, mechanical warriors, apostles, and elders of the Iron Council were all covered in a layer of purple. "I was born at the end of the road of sand and fire, the instigator of eternal ideas, the pioneer of the path of machinery, the faith of all the exiled, the fanatical pursuers of machinery, the owner of the mechanical city, the only king of the Gale Desert, the father of Goria, the avenger of the Freedom Federation, and the initiator of the mechanical revolution, Qian Qian. I am the machinery god of the wasteland planet. Now, let's join the glorious evolution." The purple energy quickly spread through the entire city. Link could see that all the infected mechanical creatures had the same purple energy in their eyes. Link glanced at the androids and mechanical warriors. Their health points had increased by at least 30%. Their cores had also been upgraded, which meant that their attacks were more powerful and their reactions faster. Seeing this, Link couldn't help but ask John, "Now that these small fries have been strengthened, can you still deal with them?" John chuckled. "If you can't handle the mechanical pioneers, don't be so stubborn. As long as you ask, I'll be there as soon as possible. Tisk, you'd better take care of yourself first. With so many machine elders eyeing you covetously, I'm afraid your small body won't be able to withstand it." Although the mechanical pioneer Dr. Zhao had a terrifying aura, Link and John still looked relaxed. They even joked with each other. The bombarding chicken people, who were standing on top of the laboratory building and recording the video, were dumbfounded. The three of them stood on the rooftop and watched as the pioneer of machinery, Dr. Zhao, evolved everyone in the city. From their point of view, the thousands of combat units in the city glowed with a purple light. The entire city was decorated with purple light, like the stars in the galaxy. "By the way, are John and Link laughing?" Lang Feng's hands were on the rooftop, and he looked down at the ground. "This is ridiculous. Are these two so confident that they can retreat unscathed? Don't forget that Link still has a trump card. When the Earth Dragon King was dragged into the castle, a tens of miles long underground cave appeared in this mission. It's unrealistic for the Silver Army ants or the rats to work with such a large amount of work. I think Link might have already subdued the Earth Dragon King." Zui Feng analyzed. As the first group of players to transport goods, they encountered the Earth Dragon King and were the last to participate in the transportation process. Wind-chasing Wolf immediately came to this conclusion after seeing the crypt today. If that's the case, then the next battle will be interesting. The three players were glad that they had stayed. Now that he had personally witnessed the battle between the three boss-level NPCs, especially when Link and John were facing an army of tens of thousands of machines. He should at least show some of his trump cards, right? The scene returned to the bottom of the laboratory building. The mechanical pioneer, Dr. Zhao, saw the two's nonchalant attitude and was happy instead of angry. Very good. Although you are all made of inferior flesh and blood, you have extraordinary strength. After I defeat you, I will personally transform your fragile limbs and organs into machines, allowing you to enjoy the pleasure of mechanical evolution and become the best war machines under my command. I'm sure you'll become my masterpieces. So, Yingluo, embrace your fate. As soon as the mechanical pioneer finished speaking, the mechanical tentacles behind it extended and stabbed towards Link and John. Link and John dodged quickly and acted according to the plan they had agreed on. As Link dodged, the dagger in his hand flashed and flew in the opposite direction, towards the formation of the mechanical warriors. There were only 2 minutes left of the blood rage status that he had gained from killing the robot warriors. Link needed to kill another batch to refresh the blood rage status. The mechanical pioneer's metal tentacles were as fast as lightning, and they could extend and turn at will, making it impossible to guard against. In the time it took to dodge, Link had already been hit several times by the mechanical tentacles. If that's all you've got, it's too disappointing. I've decided to remove you from my collection list. The mechanical pioneer got down from the flying saucer and strolled around leisurely. The metal tentacles behind it started attacking Link from all directions. Link clutched his chest and coughed. He had to admit that the mechanical pioneer's attacks were very powerful. After a few rounds of attacks, with the nano battle suit absorbing the damage, Link could still feel the pain in his chest. Link was now at level 55, so his nano battle suit could absorb 1650 damage. The reason why he didn't attack was to use these shields to test the damage of the mechanical pioneer Professor Zhao, and to absorb a wave of damage so that he could refresh his blood rage level later. According to the data from the previous battle, these mechanical tentacles would cause 50 points of damage to Link each time they hit him. This was the damage he received after stacking 70 layers of blood rage and gaining 350% resistance. If Lin Ke did not have these additional resistances, each hit would have dealt at least 150 points of damage. It was unrealistic to fight Dr. Zhao while stealing minions. So, Link planned to make it big and then focus all his energy on fighting Dr. Zhao after he spawned the blood rage. From the corner of his eye, Link saw that the dagger had already flown into the crowd of mech warriors. He smiled at the mechanical pioneer and said, "If that's what you think, then it looks like I still need to show off my strength." The next second, Link disappeared from the spot. The tentacles' attacks all missed. Meanwhile, Link had already appeared in the crowd of robot warriors 80 meters away. All the robot warriors were stunned. They did not expect Link to suddenly cross the distance of nearly 100 meters and appear here. Surprise, F***CK. Link chuckled and fired Apocalypse on the spot. In addition to the 1600 damage absorbed by the nano battle suit, he instantly killed all the mechanical warriors and mechanical apostles within a 20-meter radius. The effect was comparable to a mini-missile. The powerful explosion and shock wave forced the mechanical wreckage out of range. John, who was fighting with several elders of the Steel Council, saw the huge commotion Link had caused and couldn't help but glance at the body on the ground. Although he didn't know the exact effect of Link's move, John knew that these dead people would soon be converted into Link's combat power and become stronger. The 3 players on the rooftop of the building were all dumbfounded. If Link's battle with John in the laboratory building wasn't shocking enough, then the scene of him instantly killing all enemies within a 20-foot radius with a flash was shocking. From the roof, it was like a vacuum. On the other hand, John, who won with speed and attack, and the group battle machinery elder were somewhat overshadowed in comparison. Link looks so gentle, I didn't expect him to use an explosive attack. This level of damage is simply the peak of the pugilist class. The power of one move is comparable to a missile. It seems like I made the right choice to stay behind this time. To be able to watch a battle of this level live is far more shocking than watching it in a video. It's definitely a feast for the eyes. While the three players were staring at him, Link had already turned around and charged back at the mechanical pioneer Professor Zhao. The Blood Fury level jumped from level 70 to level 99. Attack, movement speed, and resistance all increased by 495%. This time, Link didn't just dodge. Instead, he rushed forward. With his resistance increased to 495%, the mechanical pioneer's metallic tentacles could only deal a pitiful 30 points of damage to Link. The flash dagger and the tentacle collided, making a piercing sound of metal hitting metal, accompanied by an explosion of sparks. The position where the two exchanged blows looked like a small fireworks show. The mech warriors, and apostles in the distance did not know where to use their strength. On one side, their leader, Dr. Zhao, was fighting with Link. Link was so fast that even with their temporarily evolved program, they could only catch his afterimage. If they fired rashly, they might hit their leader. On the other side, it was even more difficult. The Elder of the Iron Council and John were entangled in a battle. They couldn't even find a gap, let alone lock onto them. They shuttled between the buildings and streets of the experimental area. They didn't have a chance to attack at all. At this moment, they could only watch the battle between the two sides. In such a top battle, they were not even qualified to be cannon fodder. Link gave up on the magic box pistol and used his high resistance and HP to attack Dr. Zhao with both his flashing dagger and throat crusher. Although there were 4 tentacles behind Dr. Zhao, Link's attack speed was now extremely fast, and his damage was almost 5 times higher. After a long battle, many saw-like dents had appeared on Dr. Zhao's tentacles. Even his heart and back had a few white dagger marks. Imprisonment. The purple core at the top of the golden scepter transferred energy to Dr. Zhao's arm. Then, a mechanical field suddenly appeared under Link's feet. Link immediately threw out his flash dagger. Before anyone could flash out, electricity surged in the field, and their feet went numb. At the same time, they could feel a strong suction force from the center of the field as if they had entered a huge vortex. The next second, Link flashed to the dagger's location. He felt a lingering fear. Fortunately, his current resistance was high enough, and the stun effect was short. Otherwise, he would really be trapped in the confinement field and could not get out. In just a second, Link's HP had dropped by more than 300, and this was even after his resistance had increased by 5 times. Without this additional resistance, he would have lost at least 1500 plus HP. As expected of a level 50 chieftain tier boss. This damage is simply incomprehensible. Link had checked Dr. Zhao's information before the fight, but because their levels were similar, it was basically a question mark. After a while of fighting, Link cast Detect and finally saw some attributes. Name, Professor Zhao. Race, mechanical human body. Level, level 50 plus, leader. Class, mechanical pioneer. Identity, leader of the machinery faith. Health points, 17850/20,000. Energy, 7500/8000. Attributes, Intelligence 450, Energy 320, Others unknown. Talent, Lord of the City. Skills, Tentacle Pierce, Imprisonment, Mechanical Force Strengthening, Power of Evolution, Others unknown. Evaluation, the pinnacle of machines on Wasteland Planet. With 20,000 health points, it could be said to be tough. Link's series of attacks had only dealt around 2,000 damage. What about now, do I have the qualifications? The mechanical pioneer was in a sorry state. It had been flustered in response to Link's attack. This guy's speed was too fast, and the damage was not low. The 4 tentacles were made of the toughest alloy the city could find. They were connected to both neurons and mechanical signals, so they would automatically defend themselves in case of an emergency. Furthermore, the combat system would automatically analyze the enemy's attack patterns according to the response and give the best solution. Even so, the mechanical pioneer didn't gain the upper hand in the close-range battle. It had completely relied on the hardness of its mechanical parts to withstand Link's attacks. "You are indeed qualified to be my spoil of war, and you will become the most outstanding fighting machine in my hands." As the mechanical pioneer spoke, he raised his golden scepter. The purple energy core shot out a purple laser beam. A powerful high-frequency beam shot out from the core, tearing through the air and causing it to tremble. The moment the purple laser shot out, Link had already dodged. He had been prepared for this. After all, he hadn't participated in the attack on the city in his previous life. However, Lin Ke had seen many videos and explanations on the forum about the boss's skills. When the players attacked Floating Mech City, they had suffered many losses. Not only on the Wasteland forum, but even in the real world, this matter had made many hot searches and reports. "Since you've brought out something new, it's impolite not to return the favor. Let me show you my precious Qian." As soon as he finished speaking, the foundation where the mechanical warriors were standing collapsed. The robots, mechanical warriors, and apostles fell into the pit, and a silver mist that was like moonlight covered their bodies. A heart-wrenching scream came from the huge pit. A moment later, the mechanical warriors and apostles that were trapped in the pit were devoured, leaving behind only broken machines and skeletons. Then, the silver mist took off and flew toward the location where more mechanical soldiers were. Chapter 389 Metal Storm vs Metal Storm. The 150,000 silver army ants formed a large silver net and flew toward the mechanical army. The mechanical soldiers, who could only be onlookers, were terrified at this moment. They had no idea what the silver mist was. However, in the next second, the large net shining with silver light landed on the mechanical soldier. Before the mechanical soldier could see clearly, his skin and muscles turned into flesh and blood. They were instantly devoured, revealing only white bones. The mechanical army's gunfire erupted, and flames soared into the sky. However, the tiny silver army ants were not easy to hit. When the fire dragon poured down, the silver army ants would scatter. When the fire power decreased or stopped, they would immediately gather again. During this process, worker ants and soldier ants would be continuously deployed to deal damage to the mechanical army on the ground. The three players standing on the rooftop were shocked. Although the silver army ants were no longer a secret to them, these little guys that could transform at will had to take on all kinds of dirty work in the environment. However, when 150,000 silver ants appeared at the same time, under the brilliant light of the golden vertical eye, the sky was filled with a galaxy-like light. Together with the mechanical army in the mech city that had been inspired by the power of evolution, it formed the most magnificent and gorgeous scene in the video of the bombing chicken. The effect of these silver army ants is too ridiculous. It's like a highly corrosive poisonous mist. Anyone who gets hit by it will die. These silver army ants specialize in gnawing on metal, and it can be said that they are the nemesis of the machinery faith. If it's gathered, it will form a net, and if it's scattered, it will be killed. It's difficult to destroy it. This wave of machinery faith is going to suffer. As the player who had followed Link for the longest time, Wind Chaser was familiar with these pets and could get to the point immediately. With such a nemesis, there was no need to worry about not being able to defeat the machinery faith. The three players straightened their backs. They had been observing the battle earlier. Once Link and John were at a disadvantage, they would leave through the hole in the building. But now, Ying Luo, a desert-born slave, sneakily made his way through the underground cave to the vicinity of the Goria Grand Canal. The undisclosed Cannibal King and his accomplices have successfully infiltrated the city. The despicable thief has successfully obtained the nutrition chamber he wants from the energy center. Link has entered the laboratory building and successfully killed an elder of the Steel Council. Chairman Lin killed hundreds of machinery faith soldiers in the hall of the experimental building. The Great Lord of the Slums will annihilate the evil forces in the city. Shadow, your emperor has returned. In this situation, how could they leave? Taking down the floating mech city was the day the siege would change sides. The players were already fantasizing about the scene of Link and John conquering the entire floating mech city. As the player representatives, the three of them would also be treated as heroes. As for John, who was fighting with the elders of the Steel Council, he had successfully killed 2 of the machinery elders, but the players' attention was not on him at all. "John? I'm sorry, we're not close." The mechanical pioneer, Professor Zhao, watched as the members of the mechanical army drank their tea one after another, and his flying saucer began to quickly analyze the composition of these microorganisms. In a second, Dr. Zhao came to a conclusion. The microorganisms that were wreaking havoc in the mechanical army at the moment were a group of ant-like creatures with metallic bodies. Professor Zhao's first thought was that it was an ant robot, but the analysis report from the flying saucer soon showed that it was a creature with metal as its body element. There was no mechanical structure inside. Although he was shocked by the lethality of the metal ants, Professor Zhao also knew the way to deal with them. The metal on his body would inevitably react with the magnetic field. Dr. Zhao raised one of his tentacles, and the sharp spikes on the end opened up, revealing a black muzzle. It was aimed at the place where the Silver Army ants were wreaking havoc. "You want to lay a hand on my pet? Have you asked me?" Link suddenly appeared in front of the tentacle. Throat cutter and flash daggers glowed like a new moon. Zheng zheng. Buzz. The sparks of metal clashing burst out, and the next second, an electromagnetic shock wave blasted out from the muzzle of the tentacle cannon. Electromagnetic energy poured out, but because Link used his dagger to interfere with the tentacle's aim, it brushed past the silver ant. However, there were still a small number of silver flying ants in the air. After coming into contact with the electromagnetic energy, they crackled with electricity and were annihilated into ashes. The next second, Link's figure flashed behind Dr. Zhao, and a dagger suddenly appeared at his neck. Clang! Another flash of fire appeared, and a huge critical hit number of 1024 appeared above the mechanical pioneer's head. Before Link could make his second attack, Professor Zhao's body was surrounded by a ball of electromagnetic force. The force of the explosion was like a truck weighing tens of tons. Link was sent flying dozens of meters like a kite with a broken string. The mechanical pioneer turned around, and the purple energy under the skull helmet surged violently. It was as furious as fire and writhed wantonly. The mechanical pioneer touched the wound on its neck, and the metal neck was already showing signs of cracking. The cut just now had directly caused a dent about 1 centimeter deep. If the same spot was cut again, the metal protection of the entire neck would break, revealing the sophisticated and complex internal circuits and connections. Dr. Zhao's hands were shaking, and purple flames of anger burst out of his eyes. "You've angered me, Ant." Electromagnetic waves surged around Dr. Zhao, and mechanical force and electric light formed the center of the storm. Link diverted the force in the air. He grabbed a street light on the transport line with his hook and jumped onto an empty transport train. The steel on the ground let out a loud, twisted, and sour sound. Then, it was torn apart by a violent force. Countless metal fragments surrounded Dr. Zhao, like a ring around a huge planet, and were endowed with the power of thunder in the storm and lightning. Link's expression was serious. The air felt sticky in the strong wind. Seeing this, even Link, who had almost 5 times the power, didn't dare to go against it. He definitely couldn't take this move head-on. John, who was fighting on the side, saw the furious Dr. Zhao from the corner of his eye. As a legendary NPC, his intuition told him that Dr. Zhao's move was not simple. Even Link, who had been strengthened by the death aura and was several times stronger, would still be in trouble if he was careless. "Stop him! He's trying to interfere with the pioneer." The machinery elder, who had evolved, could easily see through John's intentions. It was simply impossible for him to stop John by himself. However, the other elders of the Iron Council could exchange their thoughts, tactics, and data in real time through mechanical synchrony. It could be said that the 5 elders who were besieging John now shared the same thought. Full mock. One elder might not be able to stop John, but if the 5 elders used their strongest skills together, they would definitely be able to delay John. The Gundam pulled out a sword hilt. In the next second, a purple high-frequency vibration energy surged out, and a giant sword over 10 meters long appeared in its hand. The 2-meter-tall mechanical fist, with mechanical force and purple electricity flowing on the surface, punched the ground. The entire asphalt road suddenly exploded, producing a huge amount of heat that melted the surface of the ground, forming a pool of lava. The other machinery elders also used their own unique skills to try to stall John. The 3 people standing on the rooftop were stunned when they saw the commotion. Lang Feng furrowed his brows. With his special forces soldier's sense of smell and perception of auras, he could feel that this move from Professor Zhao was absolutely earth-shattering. Once it was done charging, even Link would find it hard to resist. Do you guys think Link can dodge this? This move caused a lot of commotion. It should be a big move, right? There are so many metal fragments, how can you dodge them all with a flash? Link is a level 55 commander level NPC. After all, this move will probably injure him severely but not kill him, right? Isn't it powerful? Try to interrupt Ying Luo first. Just as Wind Chaser, P.R.O. and Bomb Chicken were discussing whether or not Link could take this attack, Lang Feng had already jumped onto the platform at the edge of the rooftop. His clothes were fluttering in the wind. Lang Feng held the electromagnetic gun he had taken from the mechanical zealot and aimed it at Dr. Zhao, who was casting spells, ready to shoot a series of shots at his head. Wind-chasing Wolf and Fried Chicken suddenly glanced at Lang Feng, who was standing on the high platform and aiming. They were stunned for a moment and said, "Lang Feng, what do you want? You have been targeted. Target has been locked. Target location confirmed." Professor Zhao's system gave him a prompt in an instant, and he had already sensed the enemy's location. Low-level structure, erase. As soon as he finished speaking, a wisp of metal fragments around the mechanical pioneer flew out. Shua shua shua. Before Wind-chasing Wolf could finish his question, Lang Feng's body had been broken into countless pieces by the metal fragments with electromagnetic force. Minced meat, broken bones, and blood splashed all over the 2 of them. At this moment, they seemed to have been frozen in place, and their minds were blank. Although Wind-chasing Wolf had experienced the closed beta and had a deep understanding of the game's virtual reality. However, after playing the game for so long, this was the first time he had seen someone die like this. It was really a bombshell, and there was no exaggeration at all. What made him feel the most uncomfortable was the game's death mechanism. The remains and effects of the dead would only disappear after 10 minutes. In other words, he and Fried Chicken would have to endure for another 10 minutes while Lang Feng was being shot everywhere. Link frowned at the sight of Lang Feng's death. In the next second, purple energy suddenly appeared in Link's black eyes. A similar whirlwind started swirling around him. Link stood on the train. In an instant, the electric storm swept away all the metal on the train. Even the tracks were lifted and crushed into metal fragments. Just like Dr. Zhao, only the metal disc under his feet was left floating in the air by the powerful electromagnetic force. In the distance, John was trying his best to get rid of the elder. When he saw Link use the Mirror Man skill to copy Professor Zhao's skills, he stopped and heaved a sigh of relief. This way, Link would not be at a disadvantage. John slowly turned his head, his messy hair half covering his sharp eyes. He stared at his prey and said quietly, "Did you guys just use your trump cards? If that's the case, it's my turn to attack now, Ying Ying." The machinery elders all felt that they had been targeted and had become the prey of a legendary killer. Their backs were drenched in cold sweat, and they had an ominous feeling. Why would Elder Lin use this move? Bombing Chicken was dumbfounded. It was clear that only a super-strong mechanic could use such a move. You ask me? Who should I ask? Wind-chasing Wolf was stunned. His brain crashed and he couldn't extricate himself from the magnificent duel downstairs. Although the open beta had just started more than a month ago, Wind-Chasing Wolf was sure that the peak battle in version 1.0 was nothing more than this. When Dr. Zhao saw Link use the same move as him, his logical analysis system crashed for a moment. He tried to analyze how Link could use this move without high-level core energy, but after 2.3 billion attempts, he only got an error warning. What was even more incomprehensible to him was that Link's power was slightly stronger than his even though they were the same skill. A match, right? Come on, I'm not afraid of you. Link shouted with confidence. After completing all 3 basic skills for the mechanic class, Link received a beginner mastery rating for Man in the Mirror, and the damage simulation was 50%. Link's attribute was 145 points of energy. Based on the skills rule that every point of energy was equal to a 0.5% damage increase, Link's energy could be converted into 72.5% of the damage increase, plus the 50% damage simulation. It was the same Metal Storm skill, but Link's damage bonus reached 122.5%, which had already surpassed the original version of Professor Zhao, who was the machinery god. The warriors of the machinery faith were equally shocked. As the most passionate and devout believer in the path of machinery, the mechanical pioneers represented the strongest mechanic on the entire wasteland planet, a godlike existence. But now, someone actually used a mechanic skill that was even stronger than mechanical pioneer. The rock-solid faith of these devout believers began to crack at this moment. The mechanical pioneer was furious. He activated Metal Storm and scattered it towards Link. Link also cast Metal Storm. Under the golden vertical eyes illumination, the 2 dazzling crystal plates crashed into each other. It was like the galaxies in the universe colliding and fusing. The 2 metal storms stirred up strong winds, forming thunderstorms and quaking sounds in the center. A strong gust of wind blew, making it hard for people to open their eyes. Countless metal fragments were thrown into the air as they spun. The solar energy receiving panel that was the first to bear the brunt of the impact on the outer wall of the laboratory building shattered under the impact, falling to the ground like a rain of diamonds. Then, the windows and the walls seemed to have been blown away by a strong wind. The walls were peeled off and gradually devoured. Wind-Chasing Wolf and Fried Chicken quickly ran to the other side of the building's roof, afraid that they would be swept into the storm and destroyed. In the end, Link's Metal Storm was still stronger. After the scuffle, the aftermath continued to spread in the direction of the mechanical pioneers. The path along the way was turned into sand by the metal fragments. The mechanical pioneers, who had nowhere to escape, immediately activated their mechanical field and avoided the disaster. However, a 100-meter-tall catalyst tower not far behind him collapsed in the metal storm and was immediately wiped out. When the aftermath of the metal storm dissipated, the place where they passed by just now was barren and desolate. P.S. Seeing that Wanjun stays up late every day until 4 or 5 o'clock, don't hide your monthly votes. Vote for them all. Chapter 390 The Last Move. The mechanical pioneer, Dr. Zhao, removed the protective field and looked back at the ruins where the metal storm had passed. The mechanical warriors were defeated by the Silver Army ants, and their signals disappeared one after another. In the distance, the battle between the Iron Dukedom's elder and the number 1 assassin on Wasteland Planet, John, was still ongoing. However, as the battle continued, more and more elders fell. These elders were important to the Steel Council and the city's rapid development. Seeing them fall one by one, Professor Zhao was furious. The once proud mechanical city and mechanical army seemed to be on the verge of collapse under Link and John's attacks. The purple energy in the mechanical pioneer's eyes was like 2 tornadoes, wanting to swallow Link alive. If they didn't use their trump card, the city would suffer even greater losses. The mechanical pioneer stood on the ground, and the machinery on its legs suddenly softened and turned into tree roots. They spread and were closely integrated with the ground, like an iron tree rooted in the ground. Seeing this, Link's expression turned grim. He was very familiar with this move of Dr. Zhao's. In the video of the players attacking the city in his previous life, the scene that shocked the netizens was not the metal storm or the advanced flying saucer of the mechanical pioneers. Instead, it was the super powerful form when he took root in the city and merged with it. Professor Zhao used his talent, Lord of the City. In his previous life, Link had been farming machine maniacs in the ruins of the city in the desert when the siege had taken place. He had not been there personally. However, after seeing the endless stream of videos on the forum, Link finally understood the whole picture of the attack on the city. The most impressive scene was the explosion of power after Professor Zhao's body was buried in the ground and fused with the city. According to the player's analysis of the skill, it was confirmed that the pioneer of machinery had added his talent, Lord of the Mechanical City, to the skill's power. And now, Professor Zhao was using his talent again. Lord of the City, Professor Zhao and the city have become one. The entire city has become a part of Professor Zhao's body. He can use the equipment and mechanical army at will to recover all lost health and energy points. Defense increased by 300%. This talent was very powerful at first glance, comparable to the dragon in the abyss of the Touch Dragon God. However, on top of recovery, it would also increase defense by 3 times. It was simply an iron turtle. If you think that the ability to recover is the most powerful part of this talent, then you are wrong. The most powerful part of the talent was that the mechanical city was one with Professor Zhao, and he could use the equipment and mechanical army at will. This wasn't just a simple command. If it was like this, the mechanical pioneers could do it without using their talents. The talent allowed Professor Zhao to transfer his consciousness to every member of the mechanical army. The tens of thousands of soldiers in the city were all part of Professor Zhao's consciousness and the continuation of the physical body of the mechanical pioneers. And this talent directly pulled the home field advantage of the mechanical pioneers to the maximum. I'm honored that you'll be the first person to experience the ultimate funeral. However, at the same time, I'm also very regretful. As the master of machinery, this is the first time I'm going back on my word. You'll lose the chance to become the most eye-catching item in my machinery treasure vault. All of you are. As soon as Professor Zhao finished speaking, he opened his arms and faced the golden vertical eye. The golden light shone on his body, illuminating every piece of metal. His entire body seemed to be covered in gold. The mechanical behemoth that was hundreds of meters tall was still humming and operating. Its dazzling light illuminated the sky clearly. Even in Shandu, which was dozens of kilometers away, one could see the extraordinary light. Boom, boom, boom. All the lights in the city went out, and some unnecessary equipment stopped running. 80% of the energy in the energy area was channeled into the machine magnet through the underground pipes, becoming part of the radiation energy of the golden eye. Dr. Zhao raised the golden scepter in his hand and pointed it at the giant golden eye. The energy from the same source produced a wonderful traction. The energy of the golden vertical eye was like a water tornado formed on the surface of the sea. It was lifted from the turbulent sea and directed toward the purple energy core of the golden scepter. Seeing this, Link already knew what skill Professor Zhao was going to use. Seeing that he only had 320 points of energy left, he decided to go all out. Link took out his magic box pistol and fired like a meteor. The bullets were all blocked by Dr. Zhao's defensive barrier. Professor Zhao was connected to the entire city, so his defense and the damage he could withstand were increased by 5 times. Even with 99 stacks of blood rage, the magic box pistol's damage still couldn't shake the field. Link tried for a while and gave up on interrupting the spell. The mechanical pioneer used the golden scepter as a guide to direct the energy of the golden vertical eye to its body in order to unleash the terrifying disintegration ray. As the material energy of the disintegrating ray was extremely strong, no matter how strong the material was, it would not be able to withstand the high energy particle flow in the ray if it was introduced into the body. Therefore, it could only be guided by the purple energy core at the top of the golden scepter. Link's brows were tightly furrowed as he tried to think of a way to deal with this. This move was very difficult to avoid with only his body technique. Even with the bonus of blood fury, he did not dare to bet on this possibility. And Ying, who could draw energy from his body. Link suddenly noticed the elemental ring on his finger. It was made of mithril and carved with secret runes. There was a white diamond on the top of the ring. The elemental ring could unleash the power of 7 types of elemental spells, and the golden light of the golden vertical eye was also a form of energy. Link looked at his energy bar. He only had 320 points left. Using the man in the mirror skill once required 10% of his maximum energy, which was 147 points. The remaining 180 points of energy could only be used a few times if he activated Heaven's Sun Gazing at Air, maintained his status, or flashed his dagger's ability. Regardless of the outcome, this fight would put an end to today's battle. Link stared at Professor Zhao, who was hugging the sun in the distance. He clenched his left fist and aimed at the golden vertical eye. Disintegration ray, right? I'm in. Link activated the man in the mirror skill and simulated the same energy. As the mechanical giant could not tell the difference, it separated a wisp from the golden energy pool and gathered it in Link's elemental ring. Dr. Zhao glanced at Link. He had already experienced Link's talent in imitating at will. In order to prevent the same situation from happening, where the original version of the Metal Storm was no match for the pirated version, Professor Zhao was going to mobilize the entire city's power to kill Link. Many buildings in the experimental zone began to spin, and the solar panels on the surface of the buildings bent at a certain angle. Under the control of Professor Zhao's consciousness, the mechanical army that was resisting the Silver Army ants connected their energy to form an electromagnetic field, forcing the Silver Army ants back. Then, he controlled them to face the golden vertical eye. When the energy drawn out by the golden vertical eye came into contact with the purple energy source of the golden scepter, the gaseous energy between the two was immediately pulled straight and thick. The energy that was as thick as a bucket gathered at the top of the golden scepter and gradually turned purple under the fusion of the purple energy source. It was also continuously absorbing the energy provided by the mechanical giant. In your final moments, to be able to appreciate the power of Korea technology is the most perfect ending for your life. Dr. Zhao held the golden scepter tightly and gently twisted the body of the scepter. The metal at the top of the scepter, which was protecting the purple energy source, suddenly began to disintegrate and turned into a metal prism. Disintegration ray. The golden energy flowed into the energy crystal in the center of the scepter, changing its nature. It turned into a void-like purple and rushed towards Link. At the same time, Link's elemental ring successfully guided the huge amount of energy. Under the ring's effect, red disintegrating rays representing fire elements gushed out from the ring towards the purple energy. Boom! The two energy beams collided, and the space around them distorted. The light from the collision lit up the entire city. Even the sky above the floating mech city was dyed red and purple. However, the balance was broken very quickly. The red energy beam remained in a stalemate for a moment before it showed a stronger momentum and began to gradually advance toward Professor Zhao's position. Link had already used Man in the Mirror once during the Metal Storm, so he had an additional energy load effect on him. The next time he used Man in the Mirror, his damage would increase by 25%. Therefore, on top of the original 122.5% damage, the disintegration ray's skill damage had increased again, reaching a terrifying 147.5%. Dr. Zhao's skull helmet flickered with purple energy beams. At this moment, his emotions were extremely calm. He had the entire city's power. There was no way he would lose to Link. In the next second, the golden scepter turned, and the purple energy pillar that surged out passed through the metal prism in the middle of the scepter and divided into 3 parts. One of them continued to resist Link's red disintegrating beam, while the other hit the solar metal plate of the laboratory building from a strange angle. After layers of refraction, it fused back into the energy beam. There was also one that was connected to the mechanical army, like a thread of light connecting each individual, gathering all the originally heterogeneous energy cores together. All the members of the mechanical army that were hit by the disintegrating rays instantly disappeared without a trace. The disintegration ray also passed through the body of the elder of the Iron Dukedom, and the amplification reached a terrifying level. A portion of it returned to the main energy beam, while the rest entered the head of a mechanical elder. The next second, beams shot out from the mechanical eyes, ears, and mouth. John and the machinery elder were fighting at close range. The moment the disintegration ray was shot out, John felt an unusually terrifying energy. The machine elder in front of him, who was responsible for firing energy, was annihilated in an instant, not even leaving behind a speck of dust. The energy flow was surprisingly fast as it came at him. John's scalp went numb. He seemed to see his wife Masha in the purple light and the sentence "I'll wait for you." The extremely strong will to live made John's spiritual power condense to the peak. His entire body seemed to be torn apart. From his skin, muscles, tissues, and even his cells on a smaller level, John felt the connection between every cell being torn apart. In the next moment, the energy flow directly blasted past and hit the building behind him. There was no sound. The energy beam penetrated the building, and all the elements in its path were disintegrated. One could even vaguely see the space being cut open, revealing a void that disappeared in a flash. John fell to the ground with a thud. Blood seeped out of the pores of his skin, and he trembled on the ground in pain. The amplified energy returned to the main energy beam, and the three elements combined into one, making it even more powerful. The offensive and defensive situation instantly changed. The red disintegrating ray that was originally suppressing them was actually being suppressed at this moment. It began to be gradually forced back, and the purple light shone brightly. Standing on the roof of the laboratory building, Wind-Chasing Wolf and Fried Chicken looked at the scene in front of them with pale faces. They didn't know what else could turn the situation around. The machine magnate. The treasure-hunting mouse took the opportunity to sneak into the forbidden area while the mechanical pioneer was away. Usually, not even the elders of the Iron Council had the right to set foot in this place. However, since the city was now empty after the ruckus caused by Link and John, the little ones had the chance to sneak in. Under the lead of the older brother treasure-hunting mouse, the other mice quickly climbed through the ventilation pipe to the collection exhibition hall in the central forbidden area. Squeak! The treasure-hunting mouse placed its hands on its waist and ordered the rat and hamster to bite off the ventilation net. With a bang, the ventilation net fell to the ground. Water rat and smelly crickets, who were larger in size, were dizzy from the fall. On the other hand, the other three rats in the Rat Secret Service team were alert and entered their working state. The treasure-hunting mouse stood in the middle of the hall, looking at all kinds of treasures in the collection hall. It was dazzled. Because there were too many treasures, he didn't even know which one to take. The bamboo rat walked in front of the treasure-hunting mouse and shook its big brother to keep it awake. The treasure-hunting mouse shook its head and recovered from the joy of the treasure. Their master had sent them here to cause destruction, not to become bandits. However, the treasure-hunting mouse had obviously inherited Link's personality. Since it was here, it would do both things. Squeak, squeak. The treasure-hunting mouse pointed at the larger water rat in front of it and assigned it a task of groping and stealing treasures. As for the rats in the Rat Secret Service squad, "Let's go, charge with me." The treasure-hunting mouse and the scouting hamster led the way, and they quickly found the cockpit of the city. This was the main control hub of the city. The entire cockpit was high-tech, and there were no physical buttons. There was only a holographic screen and the overall view of the city. The hamster kept jumping up and down, trying to grab the projection of the city. The other members of the Rat Secret Service team had never seen such an advanced cockpit before. They all leaned their heads in front of the projector, completely forgetting their purpose of coming here. Seeing this, treasure-hunting mouse sighed and held its forehead. P.S. Everyone, please be sure to like the 5 years single, 3 years as a dog-colored egg badge. Wanjun has organized a like event, and there are a total of 500 people. After liking it, each person will receive 10 Kidian coins. These book coins are the activity fund given by Kidian's operations to make a like event to give back to those who have followed the book. Although it's not much, it's still a kind gesture from Wanjun. The book coins will be automatically given out after the event ends. Remember to like it.